when a billionaire CEO secretly spelled out help, gun, bomb in sign language beneath a dinner table. Only one person in the entire restaurant understood his silent scream, a shy waitress who spent her life invisible to the world. What she didn't know was that saving him would drag her into a nightmare of corporate corruption, fake rescuers, and a hostage situation where the real bomb wasn't the one strapped to the madman's chest. Before you find out if she survives, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The rain hit Chicago like God was trying to wash something dirty off the streets. Nathan Cole stood under the green awning of Waitress Steakhouse, water hammering the fabric above his head, and wondered if his son would remember him as anything other than a liar. He was 32 years old. He owned 17 properties across 3 continents. His aerospace company had just secured a defense contract worth $1.3 billion. And tonight, he was about to sit down for dinner with a man who might kill him. Nathan adjusted his tie. Italian silk probably cost more than most people made in a month, and pushed through the brass-handled door into warmth and low lighting. The maitre d' recognized him immediately. "Mr. Cole, your guest has already arrived. Booth 7, as requested." "Thank you, Marcus." The restaurant smelled like seared meat and old money. Waitress was the kind of place where senators ate beside hedge fund managers, where deals got made over 18-ounce ribeyes and bottles of wine that cost 4 figures. The walls were dark wood paneling. The lighting was deliberately dim. Privacy was the main thing you paid for here, even more than the food. Nathan walked past tables of men in suits and women in dresses that probably came from New York or Paris. Nobody looked up. That was the other thing about places like this. Everyone pretended not to notice anyone else, even when they absolutely did. Booth 7 was in its back corner. The man sitting there looked nothing like the photo Nathan had been sent. Victor Graves was supposed to be 47, but he looked 60. His face was hollow. His eyes had the jumpy quality of someone who hadn't slept right in weeks. He wore a trench coat despite being indoors, and when Nathan slid into the booth across from him, he caught a smell. Not quite body odor, but something close. Desperation, maybe. Fear. "Mr. Graves, you came." Victor's voice shook slightly. "I wasn't sure you would. You said you had information about the Talon 9 project. That's not something I ignore." Victor glanced around the restaurant like he expected someone to be watching. "They're going to kill me. You know that, right? The second I go public with what I know, I'm dead." Nathan kept his expression neutral. He'd spent years learning how to control his face during negotiations, how to never let anyone see what he was actually thinking. If you're concerned about safety, why meet in person? Why not just send the files? Because files can be dismissed. Deepfakes, people say. Fabrications. I need you to hear it from me. I need you to understand what your company did. A waitress appeared beside the table, young, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She had the kind of face people probably didn't notice much, pleasant but unremarkable. She kept her eyes down when she spoke. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I start you with something to drink?" Nathan ordered scotch. Victor asked for water, his hands trembling slightly as he spoke. The waitress nodded and disappeared without making eye contact. When she was gone, Victor leaned forward. The Talon 9 guidance system has a fundamental flaw in its thermal shielding. Under sustained combat conditions, the processors overheat. The system crashes. I reported it 8 months ago. I was told to bury the report. Nathan's jaw tightened. "That's impossible. We ran full diagnostic testing, simulated conditions. Not real combat scenarios. The military hasn't deployed them yet, but when they do, people are going to die. Pilots, civilians, and your company knows. If what you're saying is true, if..." Victor's voice rose slightly, then dropped when he noticed people at nearby tables glancing over. "I have documentation. Test results your executives deleted. Emails proving they knew. I was the lead engineer on that project for 3 years. I know what I'm talking about." The waitress returned with their drinks, moving quietly, efficiently. Nathan barely noticed her. His mind was racing through implications, legal exposure, what this would mean for the company if it went public. Victor took a shaky sip of water. "I gave them chances to fix it. Multiple chances. They threatened my career, my family. So I'm giving you one chance to do the right thing before I go to the press. Nathan picked up his scotch but didn't drink. What do you want? I want you to ground the Talon 9 fleet. Issue a recall. Fix the problem. That would cost. I know what it would cost. I also know what it costs when a fighter jet crashes because its guidance system failed. I've done the math on that too. Nathan set down his glass. Mr. Graves, you're asking me to potentially destroy a billion-dollar contract based on allegations from a disgruntled former employee. Oh, former. I was fired 2 weeks ago, escorted out by security. They said I was unstable. Victor's laugh was bitter. They're probably right about that now. Something in his tone made Nathan look at him more carefully. The man's hands were shaking worse now. There was sweat on his forehead despite the restaurant's cool temperature. Are you all right? Victor reached inside his trench coat. Nathan's entire body went rigid. When Victor's hand emerged, it was holding a phone. He placed it on the table between them. I'm going to show you the files. Then you're going to make a choice. But Nathan wasn't looking at the phone anymore. He was looking at what he'd glimpsed when Victor opened his coat. Wires, a small electronic device taped to the man's chest, what looked like blocks of something wrapped in plastic. His throat went dry. Victor saw where he was looking and smiled sadly. Now I have your attention. Nathan's mind went blank, then flooded with panic. He thought about his son. Cameron was 7 years old. He liked dinosaurs and hated broccoli, and still sometimes crawled into Nathan's bed when he had nightmares. Who would take care of him if... Don't. Victor's voice was quiet but firm. Don't call for help. Don't make a scene. Just look at the files. Nathan's hands had dropped below the table. His heart hammered against his ribs. He couldn't breathe right. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to shout, to do something. Instead, he moved his fingers. It was something stupid he'd learned years ago, back when Cameron was first diagnosed with hearing problems, and they thought he might need to learn sign language. Cameron's hearing had turned out fine, just chronic ear infections, but Nathan had kept practicing anyway. Something to do during boring conference calls. H-E-L-P. His fingers spelled it out beneath the table, slow and deliberate, even though he knew it was pointless. Who would see? Who would understand? G-U-N. Victor was talking, explaining something about the files, but Nathan couldn't focus on the words. His vision had narrowed. Everything felt surreal. B-O-M-B. The waitress came back to the table. Nathan barely registered her presence until she spoke. Have you gentlemen decided on... Her voice cut off. Nathan looked up and saw her staring at him. Not at his face, at his hands below the table. Their eyes met. She understood. Emily Harper had been invisible for most of her 30 years. It wasn't that people actively ignored her. It was more like she existed in the spaces between other people's attention. In high school, she'd been the girl teachers forgot to call on. In college, she'd been the roommate people didn't quite remember. And for the past 6 years, she'd been a waitress at Waitress, serving food to wealthy strangers who looked through her like she was made of glass. She'd made peace with it mostly. Being invisible meant being safe. Being safe meant nobody asking questions about her brother, or why she worked double shifts, or why she lived in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew, no matter how much she cleaned. Tonight was supposed to be simple. Friday dinner rush, decent tips if she didn't screw anything up, home by 11 if she was lucky. She'd been serving the 2 men in booth 7 without really looking at them, just another pair of suits making some kind of deal. But when she came back to take their order, the younger one's hands were moving beneath the table. H-E-L-P. Emily froze. She'd been using American Sign Language since she was 12, when her brother Mateo lost his hearing after a car accident. 14 years of signing, of moving between the hearing world and the deaf world, of translating thoughts into hand shapes and finger movements. And now this stranger in an expensive suit was signing for help, G-U-N. Her eyes snapped to his face. He was staring at her with an expression she recognized. The look Mateo got when he was trying to communicate something important to hearing people who couldn't understand him. Desperate. Urgent. B-O-M-B. Emily's hands started shaking. The notepad she was holding suddenly felt like it weighed 50 pounds. Have you gentlemen decided on... Her voice sounded strange in her own ears. The man across from the younger suit, older, hollow-faced, wearing a trench coat, looked at her with eyes that made her skin crawl. "We need a few more minutes," he said. Emily nodded. She couldn't seem to make her feet move. The younger man, she thought she recognized him now, maybe from the business section of newspapers, was still staring at her. His hands moved again, so subtle nobody else would notice. CALLPOLICE. "Of course," Emily heard herself say. "I'll check back soon." She walked away on legs that didn't feel entirely attached to her body. Her mind was screaming. There was a bomb in her restaurant. A bomb. She should run. She should pull the fire alarm. She should. "Emily." Her manager, Dennis, appeared beside her near the kitchen doors. "Table 12 needs their check, and booth 3 wants to know if we have the salmon special tonight." She stared at him. How was the world still normal? How was Dennis still worried about salmon specials when there was a man with a bomb 15 feet away? "I need—" Her voice cracked. "I need to make a phone call." "Your break's not for another hour." "It's an emergency." Dennis sighed the sigh of someone who dealt with waitress drama for 2 decades. "Make it quick. We're slammed." Emily practically ran to the small break room behind the kitchen. Her hands shook so badly she could barely unlock her phone. She dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "There's a—" Emily's voice came out as a whisper. She forced herself to speak louder. "There's a man with a bomb at Vertice Steakhouse on North Michigan Avenue. He's in booth 7 with another man, and I think he's holding him hostage." A pause. "Ma'am, did you see the explosive device yourself?" "No, but the other man, he used sign language to tell me. He said help, gun, bomb. He spelled it out." "Can you describe the suspect?" Emily's mind went blank. What had he looked like? Older, maybe late 40s, wearing a trench coat. He's sitting across from a younger man in a suit. "Is anyone in immediate danger?" "I don't know. They're just sitting there, talking. But the younger man was terrified. I could see it." "Okay, ma'am. I need you to stay calm. Officers are being dispatched to your location. Can you safely evacuate the building?" Emily thought about the 50 or so people in the dining room, the couples celebrating anniversaries, the business people making deals, the kitchen staff who barely spoke English and couldn't afford to lose a night's pay. "If I try to evacuate, he'll know something's wrong. He might—" "Ma'am, your safety is the priority. Find a way to leave the building." "I can't." Emily realized it was true even as she said it. "There are too many people. If he panics—" "Ma'am, just send help, please, quickly." She hung up before the dispatcher could argue. Her whole body was shaking now. She thought about Mateo, about how she was supposed to pick him up from his job at the grocery store at 11:30, about how she'd promised to help him study for his community college exam this weekend. She couldn't fall apart. Not yet. Emily splashed cold water on her face and went back out to the dining room. Booth 7 looked exactly the same. The two men were still talking, heads bent close together. If you didn't know what to look for, you'd think it was just another business meeting. But Emily knew what to look for now. She saw the tension in the younger man's shoulders, the way his eyes tracked every person who walked past their booth, the way the older man's hand stayed inside his coat. She approached the table with a glass of water she didn't remember filling. "Everything all right here, gentlemen?" The older man smiled at her. It didn't reach his eyes. "Fine. We're not quite ready to order yet." "No rush." Emily set down the water. Her hands had stopped shaking, which surprised her. "Take your time." As she turned to leave, the younger man's voice stopped her. "Miss?" She looked back. "What's your name?" It was such a strange question in that moment that Emily almost didn't answer. "Emily." He nodded slowly, like her name meant something. "Thank you, Emily." She had no idea what he was thanking her for. For understanding? For calling the police? For not screaming? "You're welcome," she said, and walked away. The next 20 minutes were the longest of Emily's life. She served other tables on autopilot, her body going through the motions while her mind stayed locked on booth 7. She kept expecting police to burst through the doors. She kept expecting the older man to stand up and start making demands. She kept expecting the bomb to go off. None of it happened. The restaurant continued its normal Friday evening rhythm. People ate expensive steaks, they drank expensive wine, they laughed at jokes Emily couldn't hear. And in booth 7, two men sat across from each other, one terrified and one desperate, and nobody else noticed. Emily was refilling water glasses at table 9 when she saw the first police car pull up outside. No lights, no sirens, just a quiet arrival. Then another car, and another. Within 5 minutes, there were at least 8 police vehicles surrounding the building. Emily watched through the restaurant's tall windows as officers took positions as what looked like a SWAT team assembled half a block away. The other diners started to notice. Conversations dropped. People stood up to look outside. "What's going on?" someone asked. "Is that the police?" Dennis appeared beside Emily, his face pale. "Did you call them?" Before she could answer, the older man in booth 7 stood up. He didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, one hand inside his coat, looking around the restaurant with an expression Emily would remember for the rest of her life. Not anger, exactly. Something sadder than that. Something that looked like grief. Then he spoke, his voice cutting through the confused murmur of the dining room. "Nobody leaves." For a second, nobody moved. It was like the restaurant had forgotten how to breathe. Then someone near the door tried to run. Victor Graves pulled his hand out of his coat. He was holding something small and black. A detonator, Emily realized with absolute certainty. Her whole body went cold. "I said nobody leaves." His voice was louder now, shaking with something that might have been fear or rage or both. "Lock the doors, now, or I press this button and we all die." That's when the screaming started. People scrambled away from booth 7, knocking over chairs and wine glasses. A woman in a red dress fell and someone stepped on her hand. The sound of breaking glass mixed with shouts and crying. "Everybody calm down," Victor's voice cracked. "Just calm down and nobody has to get hurt." Dennis ran toward the front door, probably trying to reach the locks, or maybe just trying to escape. Emily couldn't tell. Her eyes were locked on Nathan Cole, who was still sitting in the booth, his face white as paper. Their eyes met across the chaos. He signed something quickly, hands moving in small, tight gestures. N-O-T-S-A-F-E. P-O-L-I-C-E-N-O-T-S-A-F-E. What did that mean? The police weren't safe? That didn't make sense. Outside, she could see officers taking cover behind their vehicles. A voice came through a megaphone, tinny and distant. "This is the Chicago Police Department. We have the building surrounded. Release the hostages," and Victor Graves laughed. It was a horrible sound, half sob and half laugh. "They're here to kill us. Don't you understand? They're not here to negotiate. They're here to make sure nobody leaves this building alive." "You're insane," someone shouted from across the dining room. "Am I?" Victor's hand shook on the detonator. "Then why did they show up so fast? Why are there snipers on the building across the street? This isn't a rescue. This is a cleanup." Nathan stood up slowly, hands raised. "Victor, listen to me. Sit down, Mr. Cole. You're going to help me tell the truth, whether you want to or not." Emily realized she was still holding a water pitcher. She set it down carefully on the nearest table. Her mind was racing, trying to piece together what was happening. Victor had said something about truth, about Nathan's company, and Nathan had said the police weren't safe. What kind of hostage situation had police who weren't safe? A middle-aged man in a suit, Emily recognized him as a regular, some kind of lawyer, stood up near the back of the restaurant. "Look, I don't know what your problem is with Cole Industries, but the rest of us have nothing to do with it. Let us go." "Sit down," Victor said. "You can't keep 50 people hostage because you have a grudge." "I said sit down." The lawyer didn't sit. He took a step toward the door. Victor's thumb moved on the detonator. "Don't!" Nathan's voice cut through the room. "Victor, please. He's not part of this." "Then tell them." Victor's voice broke. "Tell them what your company did. Tell them about the Talon 9. Tell them about the pilots who are going to die because you cared more about profit than safety." The dining room had gone silent. Emily could hear someone crying softly near the windows. Nathan's hands were still raised. He looked at the faces staring at him. Wealthy, successful people who probably thought the worst thing that could happen tonight was an overcooked steak. Now they were hostages in a situation they couldn't begin to understand. "It's true," Nathan said quietly. "My company manufactured a guidance system for military aircraft. We knew there were problems. We covered them up." Shocked silence. "That's it?" Victor's voice rose to a shout. "That's all you're going to say? Your company sold defective equipment to the United States military. Equipment that will get people killed. And you're going to summarize it in 2 sentences? What do you want me to say? I want you to tell them why. Victor was crying now, tears streaming down his hollow face. Tell them how you threatened my family when I tried to report it. Tell them how you destroyed my career. Tell them. The windows exploded. Emily didn't understand what was happening at first. There was breaking glass and smoke and people screaming louder than before. Dark shapes moved through the smoke, men in tactical gear moving fast and low. She thought, rescue, finally. But then she saw Nathan's face. He wasn't relieved, he was horrified. And she remembered what he'd signed. Police not safe. The tactical team wasn't moving like rescuers. They were moving like hunters. Emily didn't think. She just moved. She grabbed the nearest table, heavy wood, the kind they charged extra for in places like this, and flipped it on its side. Plates and glasses crashed to the floor. She dropped behind it just as the first gunshot cracked through the air. Someone nearby shrieked. More gunshots, these ones different, muffled like they were coming from weapons with silencers. Through the smoke and chaos, Emily saw Nathan dive away from booth 7 just as bullets punched through the leather upholstery where he'd been sitting. Victor Graves stumbled backward, his hand still clutching the detonator. The tactical team wasn't trying to rescue anyone. They were trying to kill everyone. Emily's mind couldn't process it. Police didn't do this. SWAT teams were supposed to save hostages, not murder them. But the evidence was right in front of her. Men in police gear systematically firing into the crowd of terrified people who had nowhere to run. Someone crashed into her hiding spot. A woman in her 50s, blood streaming from a cut on her forehead. What's happening? Why are they shooting? I don't know, Emily said, which was true and not true at the same time. More gunshots. The sound of bodies hitting the floor. Screaming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Through the overturned table's legs, Emily saw Nathan crawling across broken glass toward Victor, who had fallen near the booth. The older man was clutching his shoulder, blood seeping between his fingers. The detonator! One of the tactical team members shouted. Get the detonator! 2 of them moved toward Victor. Nathan got there first. Emily watched him grab the small black device from Victor's shaking hand. For a second, the whole room seemed to freeze. The tactical team, the hostages, everyone, all staring at the billionaire CEO now holding the trigger to a bomb. Nathan's voice rang out, clear and commanding despite the chaos. Everyone stop, or I press it. The tactical team leader, at least Emily assumed he was the leader based on the extra patches on his gear, lowered his weapon slightly. Mr. Cole, put down the device. You're not here to rescue anyone. You're here to kill witnesses. Sir, you're in shock. We're here to help. Then why are you using silenced weapons? Why did you shoot first? Nathan's hand was steady on the detonator. Who sent you? The team leader didn't answer. Nathan turned to face the room full of terrified hostages. These men don't work for the Chicago Police Department. They work for people who want everyone in this room dead before Victor Graves can expose the truth about the Talon 9 project. He's delusional, the team leader said calmly. He's been conspiring with a known terrorist. We have evidence. Show me your credentials, Nathan interrupted. Your real credentials, not the fake SWAT gear. The team leader smiled. It was a terrible smile, empty of anything human. Mr. Cole, you're making this harder than it needs to be. He raised his weapon. Emily didn't think. There was no time to think. She grabbed a plate from the floor, heavy white ceramic, and threw it as hard as she could. It hit the team leader in the side of the head with a solid crack. He stumbled, his shot going wide. For about half a second, everyone in the room stared at Emily Harper, the invisible waitress who'd just attacked an armed man. Then all hell broke loose again. The tactical team opened fire on Nathan's position. He dove behind the bar, still clutching the detonator. Victor Graves dragged himself under a table, leaving a trail of blood. Hostages scattered in every direction, looking for cover that didn't exist. Emily ran. She didn't have a plan. She just knew she had to move. She ducked behind an overturned table, then scrambled toward the kitchen. Bullets followed her, punching holes in the walls above her head. The kitchen doors burst open and Dennis appeared, his face sheet white. What the hell is... Get down! Emily tackled him back through the doors just as more bullets shredded the space where he'd been standing. They landed in a heap on the kitchen's tile floor. Around them, the cooking staff was huddled behind industrial refrigerators and prep tables, their eyes wide with terror. "We have to get out," Dennis gasped. "The back exit. They'll have it covered." Emily didn't know how she knew this, but she was certain. This isn't a random attack. They planned this. Then what do we do? Emily had no idea. She was a waitress. She served food and smiled at customers and went home to her tiny apartment. She wasn't equipped to handle tactical teams and bombs and corporate conspiracies. But then she thought about Nathan Cole signing desperately beneath the table. She thought about Victor Graves, bleeding out in the dining room because he'd tried to expose the truth. She thought about all the innocent people who'd just come here for dinner and were now caught in something they didn't understand. Someone had to do something. The something, apparently, was her. "Stay here," she told Dennis. "Keep everyone quiet and hidden." "Where are you going?" Emily didn't answer. She was already moving back toward the dining room, low and fast. The scene that greeted her was like something from a nightmare. Overturned tables, broken glass everywhere, at least a dozen bodies on the floor. She couldn't tell if they were dead or just hiding. The tactical team had spread out across the room, methodically checking hiding spots and firing at anything that moved. And in the center of it all, behind the mahogany bar, Nathan Cole held the detonator like it was the only thing keeping the world from ending. Maybe it was. Emily crawled toward the bar, using overturned furniture as cover. A bullet pinged off a metal chair leg inches from her head. She bit back a scream and kept moving. She made it to the bar and pulled herself up beside Nathan. He looked at her like she was insane. "What are you doing?" he hissed. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "Is that thing real?" "What?" "The bomb. Is it actually real or was Victor bluffing?" Nathan blinked. I don't know. I didn't think to check." Despite everything, Emily almost laughed. Here they were, hiding behind a bar while fake police tried to kill them, and neither of them knew if the bomb that was supposedly keeping everyone alive was actually functional. "Victor," Nathan called out. "Victor, is the device real?" No answer. Emily peered over the bar. Victor Graves was still under the table where he'd crawled, but he wasn't moving anymore. There was too much blood. "I think he's dead," she whispered. Nathan's face went gray. Then this was all for nothing. "No." Emily surprised herself with the certainty in her voice. "He said he had proof. Documentation. He was going to expose what your company did. Had, past tense. Whatever evidence he had probably died with him. Maybe not." Emily's mind was racing. "He showed up here to meet you. He must have had the files somewhere. Phone, laptop, cloud storage. Even if we could find them, how would that help us right now?" Emily didn't have an answer for that. The tactical team leader's voice rang out across the ruined restaurant. "Mr. Cole, you can't win this. Surrender the device and we'll let the other hostages go." "You're going to kill everyone anyway," Nathan shouted back. "Not if you cooperate. Why should I believe you?" "Because right now you're holding the only leverage you have. Once you realize that device isn't real, and you will realize it, you'll have nothing. Make a deal while you still can." Nathan looked at Emily. His eyes held a question. She thought about Mateo, about how she'd promised to pick him up in a few hours, about how he was probably at the grocery store right now, bagging groceries and making customers smile even though he couldn't hear them. She thought about her quiet, invisible life, how she'd spent 30 years avoiding attention, staying safe, never making waves. All of that seemed very far away now. "Don't give up," she told Nathan. "Not yet." "Why?" "Give me one good reason." Emily looked at the carnage in the dining room, the terrified people, the bodies, the fake police officers who were really something much worse. "Because if we give up, they win. And people like Victor keep dying for trying to tell the truth." Nathan stared at her for a long moment. Then something shifted in his expression, something that might have been hope, or might have been desperation, or might have been both. "Okay," he said. "Okay. But I need you to do something for me." "What?" He pressed the detonator into her hands. Emily's entire body went rigid. "What are you doing?" "They want me, not you. You're just a waitress who got caught in the crossfire." "I'm not just anything," Emily heard herself say. "I know, I didn't mean—" Nathan shook his head. "Listen, I'm going to create a distraction. When I do, you run. Take that device and run as far as you can." That's insane. Probably. But I've been making insane decisions all night. Might as well commit. He smiled, and for just a second, Emily saw past the billionaire CEO facade to the terrified father underneath. I have a son, Cameron. He's 7. If I don't make it out of here, there's an envelope in my desk at Cole Industries. It has information about his trust fund, guardianship arrangements, all of that. Make sure someone finds it. You're going to make it out. Maybe. Nathan took a breath. Tell my son I loved him, that I was trying to do the right thing, even though I screwed up for a long time first. Before Emily could respond, Nathan stood up. He stood up in the middle of a room full of armed men, holding nothing but his expensive suit and whatever courage he could scrape together. I'll make you a deal, he called out to the tactical team. I'll surrender if you let everyone else walk out of here alive. The team leader laughed. You're not in a position to negotiate. I'm in the best position I've ever been in. Nathan's voice was steady. You need to kill me and Victor Graves before we can talk. But Victor's already dead, and if you kill me now in front of all these witnesses, you'll have a lot more exposure than you want. The witnesses won't be a problem. Are you sure about that? Because right now you have maybe 50 people in here. Some of them are recording this on their phones. Some of them already sent messages to loved ones. If they all disappear, questions get asked. But if they walk out alive, they're just traumatized civilians who experienced a terrible event. No questions. No investigation. The team leader considered this. And you? I'll come quietly. Just let them go first. Emily wanted to scream. This wasn't a deal. This was Nathan committing suicide while pretending it was a negotiation. Her hands tightened on the detonator. The team leader nodded slowly. All right, Mr. Cole, you have a deal. Everyone else walks. Starting now. Starting now. For a moment, nobody moved. Then a woman near the window stood up shakily. When nobody shot her, another person stood. Then another. A slow exodus began toward the doors. People helping injured friends. People crying. People moving in shocked silence. Emily stayed behind the bar, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Nathan looked down at her one last time. Go, he mouthed. She shook her head. He turned back to the tactical team. That's everyone. Now, Emily stood up. She stood up holding the detonator in both hands, her whole body shaking but her voice surprisingly steady. Nobody's going anywhere, she said. Every head in the room turned to stare at her. The team leader's expression shifted from annoyed to genuinely concerned. Ma'am, put down the device. No. Ma'am, stop calling me ma'am. My name is Emily Harper. I'm 30 years old. I'm a waitress. And I'm the one holding the trigger now, so everybody's going to shut up and listen. The silence that followed was so complete, Emily could hear her own heartbeat. She had no idea what she was doing. No plan, no backup. Just a desperate certainty that if she let Nathan sacrifice himself, if she let these fake police officers win, then Victor Graves had died for nothing. Here's what's going to happen, Emily heard herself say, her voice sounding strange and distant. Everyone, and I mean everyone, is going to walk out those doors. The hostages. Mr. Cole, me, all of us. That's not going to work, the team leader said calmly. Why not? Because that device isn't real. Victor Graves was bluffing. Prove it. The team leader smiled. You prove it. Press the button. Emily's thumb hovered over the trigger. Her entire body was screaming at her not to press it. Every survival instinct she had was begging her to put it down and run. But something Victor had said echoed in her mind. Tell them the truth. She thought about Matteo, about all the times hearing people had dismissed him or ignored him because communicating was hard. About how the world was set up for people who could hear, and everyone else had to fight just to be acknowledged. She thought about being invisible for 30 years. She was done being invisible. This device might be fake, Emily said loudly. Or it might be real. You want to find out? Keep threatening us. Keep trying to kill witnesses. Keep covering up the truth about the Talon 9 project. She looked directly at the nearest camera, some wealthy person's phone still recording from beneath an overturned table. Or you can let us walk out, and the whole world can hear what really happened here tonight. The team leader's smile faded. You're making a mistake. I've been making mistakes my whole life. At least this one might actually matter. And then, because she had no idea what else to do, Emily Harper, invisible waitress, deaf kid's sister, woman who'd spent 30 years avoiding conflict, started walking toward the door. She walked slowly, the detonator held in front of her like a shield, expecting any second to feel bullets in her back. Nathan fell in step beside her. "You're insane," he whispered. "I know," she whispered back. Behind them, the tactical team didn't move. They didn't lower their weapons, but they didn't fire either. The remaining hostages followed Emily and Nathan in a shuffling, terrified mass. Nobody spoke. The only sound was broken glass crunching under their feet. Emily reached the door, put her hand on the handle. The night air beyond smelled like rain and freedom. She looked back at the tactical team leader one last time. "Tell whoever sent you," she said, "that the truth doesn't die just because you kill the people trying to tell it." Then she pushed open the door and stepped out into the Chicago night, still holding the detonator, still terrified, still completely unsure if she was about to die or about to live, or about to somehow change everything. The rain was still falling. Police cars, real ones this time, she hoped, surrounded the building. News vans were pulling up. Cameras were everywhere. And standing in the middle of it all, shaking like a leaf but still standing, was Emily Harper. For the first time in her life, she was impossible to ignore. The flashbulb started the second Emily's feet hit the sidewalk. She stumbled, nearly dropping the detonator, and someone's hand, Nathan's hand, caught her elbow to steady her. The rain had gotten worse. It soaked through her work uniform in seconds, plastering her hair to her face. Around them, a wall of sound rose up, shouted questions from reporters, barked orders from police, sirens wailing in the distance. Miss, can you tell us what happened in there? Mr. Cole, is it true you were working with the hostage taker? Are there casualties? How many people were injured?" Emily couldn't process any of it. Her entire body was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. She was still holding the detonator. Why was she still holding it? She should put it down. She should... "Emily." Nathan's voice cut through the noise. "We need to move. Now." She looked at him blankly. Move where? There were police everywhere, news cameras, crowds of people. Where were they supposed to go? A woman in a police uniform approached them, hands raised in what was probably meant to be a calming gesture. "Sir, ma'am, I need you to slowly put down the device and step away from—" "No." The word came out of Emily's mouth before she'd thought about it. The officer stopped. "Ma'am, I understand you've been through a trauma, but I need you to—" "How do we know you're real?" Nathan interrupted. "How do we know you're not with the people who just tried to kill everyone inside?" The officer's expression shifted from concerned to confused. "Sir, I don't understand what you're—" "The tactical team that came through the windows." Nathan's voice was getting louder, taking on an edge of hysteria. "They had police gear, they looked exactly like you, and they were executing hostages." A ripple went through the crowd of officers surrounding them. Expressions changed. Hands moved closer to weapons. A man in a suit pushed his way through, older, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen too much. He held up a badge. "I'm Detective Mark Rashford, Chicago PD. Mr. Cole, Miss Harper, I need you both to remain calm and cooperate with—" "Prove you're real," Emily heard herself say. Her voice sounded strange, detached. "Prove you're actually Chicago PD and not corporate killers in costumes." Detective Rashford's eyebrows rose. "Corporate killers?" "They work for Cole Industries," Nathan said, "or the board members, or whoever wants to bury the Talon 9 scandal badly enough to murder 50 people. The detective looked at Nathan for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and held it up so they could see the screen. "This is the Chicago PD database. Here's my badge number, my service record, my supervisor's contact information. You want to verify it? Call the number. Ask for Captain Morrison. She'll confirm who I am." Emily stared at the phone. It could be fake. Everything could be fake. How were they supposed to trust anyone? But then she saw something that made her decision for her. Past the police line, maybe 30 yards away, there was a black SUV with tinted windows. And standing beside it, partially hidden by shadows, was one of the men from the tactical team. She recognized the way he stood, the shape of his gear. He was just standing there, watching. "They're here," Emily whispered. "Right there. The ones who tried to kill us." Detective Rashford followed her gaze. His expression went hard. "Where?" "Black SUV, 3 o'clock." The detective turned, squinting through the rain. By the time his eyes found the vehicle, the man was gone. The SUV's engine started. "Stop that vehicle," Rashford barked into his radio. "Black SUV, Illinois plates, heading north on Michigan Avenue." The SUV peeled away from the curb, tires squealing. Two police cruisers took off after it, sirens screaming to life. Emily watched them disappear into the rain and city lights. Her knees felt like water. "Inside," Rashford said. "Both of you. We need to get you somewhere secure before—" The detonator in Emily's hand started beeping. Everyone within 10 feet jumped back. Officers drew weapons. Someone shouted, "Get down!" And the whole crowd seemed to scatter at once. Emily stared at the device. A small LED light on its side was flashing red. The beeping was steady, rhythmic. Her hands had gone completely numb. "Put it down," Rashford said, his voice very calm and very far away. "Miss Harper, I need you to set the device on the ground and step away." I can't." Emily's hands wouldn't move. They were locked around the detonator like rigor mortis had set in early. Nathan moved closer instead of farther away. He put his hands over hers, his touch warm against her frozen skin. "It's not real," he said quietly. "Look at it, Emily. Really look." She forced herself to focus. The device was crude, wires and tape and what looked like a small circuit board. But now that she was actually examining it instead of just holding it in terror, she could see gaps in the construction, places where wires didn't connect to anything, components that seemed random, decorative. "The beeping started when we came outside," Nathan continued. "Not when you picked it up, not when you pressed it. When we left the building, it's on a timer or a remote signal, which means it was never under our control," Emily finished. "And if Victor wanted to blow us all up, he would have done it inside the restaurant. Not out here where we might survive the blast." Emily's fingers slowly uncurled. Nathan took the device from her hands and set it carefully on the wet pavement. Everyone held their breath. Nothing happened. A bomb disposal robot rolled forward. Emily hadn't even noticed it arriving. Metal arms carefully lifted the detonator. There was a tense moment while the robot retreated to a blast-proof container. Still nothing. "It's a fake," someone said. The words spread through the crowd like a released breath. "The bomb's not real." Emily's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the wet sidewalk, rain streaming down her face, and started laughing. It wasn't funny. Nothing about this was funny, but she couldn't stop. Nathan sat down beside her, equally drenched, looking equally unhinged. "We walked out of there holding a fake bomb." Victor was bluffing the whole time. The whole time. They looked at each other and started laughing harder. It was the kind of laughter that was too close to crying to be comfortable. Around them, police officers exchanged concerned glances. Detective Rashford crouched down in front of them, rain dripping off his nose. "Mr. Cole, Miss Harper, I need you both to come with me. There are questions that need answering." "What about the people inside?" Emily managed to ask between gasps. "The other hostages, are they okay?" "Most of them cleared out while you were playing decoy with the fake bomb. EMTs are treating injuries. Nobody dead, as far as we can tell, though there are some serious wounds." Rashford paused. "Except for Victor Graves. He didn't make it." The laughter died in Emily's throat. She thought about the hollow-faced man in the trench coat, the desperation in his voice when he talked about exposing the truth. "He wasn't a terrorist," she said. "We'll determine what he was after we investigate." Rashford stood up and offered his hand. "Can you walk?" Emily let him pull her to her feet. Her legs felt like they belonged to someone else, but they held her weight, barely. They were guided toward an unmarked car, Nathan first, then Emily. She caught a glimpse of the restaurant as they moved. Shattered windows, police tape, news crews filming everything. It looked like a war zone. She'd served dinner there 6 hours ago. The car ride was short and silent. They went to a police station, the real kind, Emily hoped, and were separated immediately. Different rooms, different detectives. Emily found herself in a small interrogation room with fluorescent lights that made everything look sick and yellow. A female detective introduced herself as Sarah Chen and offered coffee that tasted like it had been made sometime last week. "Tell me everything," Chen said. "Start from when you first noticed something was wrong." So Emily told her. The sign language, the bomb threat, the 911 call, the fake tactical team. All of it spilled out in a jumbled rush that probably didn't make much sense, but Chen just kept nodding and taking notes. "And you had no prior relationship with Nathan Cole?" "I didn't even know who he was until tonight. I mean, I recognized the name from the news, but I'd never met him. What about Victor Graves? Never seen him before in my life. Chen tapped her pen against her notepad. Here's what I'm struggling with, Miss Harper. You're a waitress. You have no security training, no law enforcement background. But tonight you managed to outsmart a team of armed professionals and walk 50 hostages out of an active crisis situation. Emily blinked. I didn't outsmart anyone. I didn't know what else to do. Most people would have run. I tried to run. I ended up behind the bar with a fake bomb instead. Why didn't you leave when you had the chance? When the hostages were evacuating? Emily thought about that. Because Nathan was going to surrender himself, and those men were going to kill him, and it felt wrong to just let that happen. Even though you didn't know him. I didn't have to know him. He was a person. They were going to kill a person. Chen studied her for a moment. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both? A knock on the door interrupted them. Another detective poked his head in and gestured for Chen to step outside. Emily was left alone with her terrible coffee and her thoughts. She checked the clock on the wall. Almost midnight. Mateo's shift at the grocery store ended at 11:30. He was probably waiting for her. Probably worried. She didn't have her phone. It was somewhere in the restaurant, either destroyed or confiscated as evidence. The door opened again. Chen came back in, but her expression had changed. She looked uncomfortable. Miss Harper, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Did Nathan Cole offer you money? Make any kind of deal with you? What? No. Why would... Because we just got word from the FBI. They're taking over the investigation, and they're very interested in the relationship between you and Mr. Cole. There is no relationship. I told you. I met him tonight. Then why did he transfer $50,000 into your bank account 20 minutes ago? Emily's brain short-circuited. He what? Chen slid a printout across the table. Bank transfer confirmation. Sender, Nathan Cole. Recipient, Emily Harper. Amount, $50,000. I didn't ask for this. I don't want this. Then why did he send it? I have no idea. But even as she said it, Emily understood. Nathan was trying to protect her, or pay her off, or both. $50,000 was nothing to a billionaire, but to Emily it was more money than she'd make in 2 years of serving overpriced steaks to people who didn't see her. It was also deeply suspicious. I want to give it back, Emily said quickly. Whatever he's trying to do, I'm not part of it. Chen leaned back in her chair. Here's the problem, Miss Harper. From the FBI's perspective, this looks like payment for services rendered. They're going to want to know what those services were. I helped him escape a hostage situation. That's it. Did he tell you anything about the Talon 9 project? About the alleged defects Victor Graves mentioned? No, we were kind of busy not dying. Did he ask you to say anything specific to the police, to the media? He told me about his son. That's it. He wanted me to make sure someone found information about his son's trust fund if he didn't survive. Emily's voice cracked slightly. He thought he was going to die. Chen's expression softened just slightly. I believe you, Miss Harper. I do. But the FBI has a different priority here. They're less interested in the hostage situation and more interested in what Nathan Cole knew about the defense contract fraud. So ask him. We can't. He lawyered up the second we separated you two. Hasn't said a word since. Emily wanted to laugh again, but it would have come out wrong. So you think I'm going to tell you what he won't? I think you might tell us what you know without realizing it's important. I don't know anything. Then this conversation shouldn't take much longer. Chen opened her notepad again. Tell me about Victor Graves. What exactly did he say about the Talon 9 guidance system? They went over it again, and again, and again. Every word Victor had spoken, every detail Emily could remember. By the time they finished, it was almost 2 a.m. and Emily's head was pounding. Can I go home now? She asked. Chen hesitated. There are reporters outside, a lot of them. You might want to wait until... I don't care about reporters. I need to check on my brother. Your brother? Mateo. He's deaf. He was supposed to get off work 3 hours ago, and I was supposed to pick him up, and he's probably terrified because I never showed up, and he can't call me because my phone is in the restaurant somewhere. Emily realized she was rambling and stopped. I just need to go home. Chen nodded slowly. I'll have an officer drive you. But Miss Harper, you should know, your life is about to get very complicated. The media is going to want interviews. The FBI is going to want more statements. And depending on what comes out about coal industries, you might end up subpoenaed as a witness. I'm a waitress. You were a waitress. Now you're the woman who stopped a corporate conspiracy with a fake bomb. That's not something people forget. The officer who drove Emily home was young and didn't try to make conversation, which Emily appreciated. They drove through rain-soaked streets while she stared out the window at a city that looked the same as it had this morning, but felt completely different. When they pulled up to her apartment building, a converted warehouse in a neighborhood that was trying to be trendy but mostly just looked tired, Emily saw someone sitting on the steps outside. Mateo. She was out of the car before it fully stopped, running through the rain toward her brother. He saw her and stood up, his face a mixture of relief and anger. "Where were you?" he signed, his movements sharp and frustrated. "I waited for an hour. I tried calling. I thought something happened." Something did happen. Emily's hands were shaking as she signed back. "I'm okay. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Mateo looked at her, really looked, and his anger dissolved into concern. What's wrong? What happened? How could she even begin to explain? Emily glanced back at the police car, at the officer watching them carefully. She turned back to Mateo. "It's a long story. Can we go inside?" They climbed the 3 flights to Emily's studio apartment. It was small and clean, and smelled faintly of the lavender candles Emily burned to cover the mildew smell that never quite went away. Mateo had a key. He stayed over sometimes when his own place felt too empty, and he let them in while Emily dripped rainwater all over the floor. She changed into dry clothes while Mateo made tea. When she came back out, he was sitting on her second-hand couch with his laptop open, his face illuminated by the screen's glow. He turned the laptop toward her. The news was already all over it. Hostage crisis at luxury restaurant. Billionaire CEO linked to defense contractor fraud. Waitress becomes unlikely hero. There was footage of Emily walking out of Vertice holding the detonator. Someone had gotten a clear shot of her face, terrified, determined, soaked with rain. She barely recognized herself. "This is you," Mateo signed. It wasn't a question. Emily nodded. "Tell me everything." So she did. She told him about Nathan's hands moving beneath the table, about recognizing the sign language, about Victor Graves and the fake bomb and the tactical team that had tried to kill everyone. She told him about holding the detonator and walking out into the lights and cameras, about the $50,000 that had appeared in her bank account like a curse. Mateo listened without interrupting, his face growing more and more concerned. When she finished, he sat back and stared at her for a long moment. Then he signed, "You're an idiot." "I know." "You could have died." "I know." "You should have run when you had the chance." "I know." "But you didn't." Mateo's hands softened. "Because you're you, and you can't just walk away when someone needs help." Emily felt tears building behind her eyes. "I was so scared, Maddie. I've never been that scared in my life. But you did it anyway." He reached over and pulled her into a hug. "That's what brave means, Em. Being terrified and doing it anyway." They sat like that for a while, Emily crying into her brother's shoulder while he held her and didn't say anything because sometimes there wasn't anything to say. Eventually, Emily pulled back and wiped her eyes. "The police said reporters are going to want interviews. The FBI might call me as a witness. Everything's going to be crazy for a while. Then we deal with crazy." Mateo signed with the kind of practical certainty that Emily had always envied. Together. Emily's phone, the old one she kept as a backup, started buzzing. She'd turned it on to call Mateo, and apparently her number had already been compromised. Unknown caller. Then another. Then another. She turned the phone off and threw it across the room. "I just want things to go back to normal," she said, even though she knew Mateo couldn't hear her. But he read her lips and signed back. Normal ended the second you understood what that man was signing. You can't go back to invisible now. He was right. Emily knew he was right, but part of her desperately wanted to try anyway. She didn't sleep that night. She kept replaying the evening in her head, seeing Victor Graves's face, hearing the gunshots, feeling the weight of the detonator in her hands. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in the restaurant with bullets flying and people screaming. Around 5 in the morning, she gave up and made coffee. Mateo was asleep on her couch, still wearing his grocery store uniform. Emily covered him with a blanket and sat by the window watching the sun come up over Chicago. Her backup phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on to check the time and immediately regretted it. 53 missed calls. 82 text messages. Most from numbers she didn't recognize. One was from her manager, Dennis. Call me ASAP. Media everywhere. Restaurant closed indefinitely. Not sure about your job. Another from a coworker. OMGM, are you okay? You're on the news. Several from reporters asking for interviews, and one from a number with no name attached. We need to talk. Meet me at Millennium Park, Cloudgate, 7 a.m. Come alone. NC, Nathan Cole. Emily stared at the message. Every reasonable instinct told her to delete it, to ignore him, to stay as far away from this mess as possible. But she found herself getting dressed anyway, putting on jeans and a jacket, writing a note for Mateo that she'd be back soon. Millennium Park was a 15-minute walk from her apartment. The rain had finally stopped, leaving everything wet and clean-smelling. There weren't many people out yet, just early morning joggers and a few homeless people sleeping under the pavilion. Cloudgate, the giant reflective bean sculpture that tourists loved, sat empty in the gray morning light. Emily approached it slowly, looking for Nathan. He stepped out from behind the sculpture, looking nothing like the billionaire CEO from last night. He wore jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low. He hadn't shaved. There were dark circles under his eyes. "You came," he said. "You transferred $50,000 into my account without asking." "I know. I'm sorry. I wanted to do something, to thank you." "You could have said thank you. That's free." Nathan smiled slightly. "I'm not great at simple solutions." They stood there awkwardly for a moment. Emily shoved her hands in her pockets. "The FBI thinks I'm working with you," she said. "They think the money is payment for something. I'll explain it was a gift. Gratitude for saving my life." "That doesn't make it better. That makes it look like hush money." "Then I'll return it. Whatever you want." Emily kicked at a puddle. "What I want is to understand what's actually happening. Victor Graves said your company covered up defects in a military contract. He said people were going to die. Was he telling the truth?" Nathan was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." The word hung in the air between them. "The Talon 9 guidance system has a thermal regulation problem. Under sustained combat conditions, the processors overheat and crash. We knew about it 18 months ago. The board decided the cost of fixing it was too high. They buried the reports and fired the engineers who wouldn't stay quiet. Including Victor." Including Victor. Nathan's hands clenched. "I voted against it, for whatever that's worth. But I didn't fight hard enough. I didn't go public. I just let it happen." "Why?" "Because I was scared. Because going public meant destroying the company my father built. It meant losing billions in contracts. It meant ruining the lives of thousands of employees who had nothing to do with the fraud." He looked at her. "And because I have a son who depends on me, and I didn't want to be the dad who went to prison for corporate whistleblowing." Emily thought about Cameron, the 7-year-old who liked dinosaurs and hated broccoli. "Where is he now?" "With my ex-wife. She has custody. I get him every other weekend and Wednesday nights." Nathan's voice cracked slightly. "I called her this morning to explain what's happening. She's already talking about filing for full custody, saying I'm unstable, dangerous." "Are you?" "I don't know anymore." He sat down on one of the benches near the sculpture. "Last night I was ready to die to protect those people. Today I'm not sure if I did it because it was right or because I wanted to feel like a hero instead of a coward." Emily sat down beside him. "You can be both, you know, coward and hero. Most people are." "Which one are you?" "I'm the idiot who picked up a bomb to save a billionaire she didn't know. I haven't figured out what category that falls into yet." They sat in silence for a while, watching joggers pass by and the city wake up around them. "What happens now?" Emily finally asked. "The FBI is going to investigate coal industries. They'll find the buried reports eventually. Victor made sure of that. He uploaded everything to some kind of dead man switch before he came to the restaurant. If he didn't check in by midnight, the files went public." "They're already out there?" "As of 1 hour ago." Nathan pulled out his phone and showed her. News articles were already breaking. Defense contractor fraud exposed. Coal industries covered up fatal defects. Whistleblower dies trying to reveal truth. Emily scanned the headlines, her stomach sinking. This is going to destroy your company. It should destroy my company. We killed Victor Graves to protect a lie. We were willing to let pilots die to protect our profit margins. Nathan's voice was hollow. I spent my whole life building something, and it turns out I built it on corpses. So fix it. How? I don't know. You're the billionaire CEO. Figure it out. Nathan laughed bitterly. I'm not going to be CEO much longer. The board is probably voting me out right now. Good. Then you'll have time to actually fix the problem instead of just managing it. He looked at her like she was speaking a foreign language. You don't understand how this works. Once you're out, you're out. No power, no influence, just another disgraced executive with a scandal following him around. Sounds like you'll finally have something in common with the rest of us. I'm trying to be serious here. So am I. Emily stood up. Victor Graves died trying to expose the truth. The least you can do is make sure his death mattered. Help the investigation. Testify against the board members who covered it up. Use whatever money and connections you have left to actually fix the problem instead of just feeling bad about it. And if I lose everything? Then you lose everything. Welcome to being human. Emily started walking away, then turned back. Also, take your money back. I don't want it. Find a charity or something. Emily, wait. What? Nathan stood there looking lost and young despite being a 32-year-old billionaire. Thank you for last night, for understanding what I was signing, for not running when you should have, for all of it. You already thanked me, remember? With the suspicious $50,000. I mean it, though. Emily softened slightly. I know, you're welcome. Now go be less of a coward. She walked away before he could respond, her hands shoved deep in her jacket pockets, her breath misting in the cold morning air. By the time she got back to her apartment, Matteo was awake and making breakfast. He took one look at her face and signed, Where were you? Meeting with Nathan Cole. The billionaire? Former billionaire, probably. He's about to lose everything. Good, Matteo signed. Rich people getting consequences. About time. Emily couldn't argue with that. The rest of the day passed in a blur. More calls from reporters, a visit from the FBI asking more questions, her landlord calling to ask if the police showing up was going to be a regular thing, Dennis texting to say the restaurant definitely wouldn't reopen for at least a month, which meant no job and no income. By evening, Emily was exhausted and anxious and ready to crawl into bed and sleep for approximately 1,000 years. Instead, she turned on the news. The story was everywhere. Cable news, social media, international headlines. Coal Industries' stock had crashed. 3 board members had already resigned. The Department of Defense had suspended all contracts pending investigation. And there was Emily's face, over and over, walking out of the restaurant holding the detonator. Mystery waitress saves hostages. Unlikely hero emerges from corporate scandal. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Harper? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. My name is Jennifer Reeves. I'm a producer for 60 Minutes. We'd like to interview you about what happened last night. I'm not interested. We're prepared to offer compensation for your time. $5,000 for a 1-hour interview. Emily nearly dropped the phone. $5,000. That was almost 4 months' rent. I need to think about it. Of course, but I should mention, other networks are also reaching out. If you're going to tell your story, you might want to choose the platform carefully. We can promise fair representation and, I said I'll think about it. Emily hung up. 3 more calls came in the next hour. Different networks, different amounts of money, all wanting the same thing, her story, her face, her 15 minutes of fame. Emily turned off her phone and sat on the couch next to Matteo, who was watching a movie with subtitles. They want to interview me, she signed when he paused it. They're offering money. How much? She told him. Matteo whistled silently. That's a lot of money, Em. I know. You could pay off your credit cards. Get a better apartment. Stop working double shifts. I know. So why do you look like someone just offered you poison? Emily thought about that. Because once I start talking to the media, I become part of the story. Not just someone who was there, but someone who's using it for attention, for money. It feels wrong. Is it though? You were there. You did help. Why shouldn't you get something out of it? Because Victor Graves is dead. And Nathan Cole is losing everything. And it feels weird to profit from a night that destroyed other people's lives. Mateo considered this. What would you do with the money if you took one of these interviews? Emily hadn't thought about it. She let herself imagine for a second, paying off debt, having savings, maybe taking a vacation. When was the last time she'd taken a vacation? But then she thought about something else. Something that had been forming in the back of her mind since she'd walked out of that restaurant. I'd want to do something that mattered, she signed slowly. Something that helped people like Victor. People who try to tell the truth and get destroyed for it. Like what? I don't know yet. But not this. Not selling my story to the highest bidder. Mateo smiled and signed, You're still an idiot. But you're my idiot. They went back to watching the movie, Emily's mind still racing with thoughts she couldn't quite organize into coherent plans. Outside her window, Chicago continued its normal Friday night routine. People went to restaurants, not Vertice, which sat dark and crime-taped and ruined. They went on with their lives, unaware or uncaring that 12 hours ago, a quiet waitress had walked out of a hostage situation holding a fake bomb, and nothing in her life would ever be quite the same again. 3 days after the restaurant, Emily stopped being able to leave her apartment. It wasn't a conscious decision. She woke up Monday morning fully intending to go job hunting. Vertice was closed indefinitely, and rent didn't pay itself. But when she reached for the door handle, her hand wouldn't turn it. Her whole body locked up like someone had replaced her bones with concrete. Mateo found her there 20 minutes later, still standing in front of the door, shaking. Em? He touched her shoulder and she flinched. What's wrong? She couldn't sign back. Her hands felt like they belonged to someone else. Mateo guided her back to the couch and sat with her until the shaking stopped. When she could finally move her hands again, she signed, I can't go out there. Why not? I don't know. I just can't. That was a lie. She knew exactly why. Outside meant cameras. It meant reporters who'd somehow found her address and camped outside her building. It meant strangers recognizing her face and wanting to talk about the worst night of her life. It meant the possibility, however small, that the men from the tactical team might find her. The FBI had told her she wasn't in danger. They told her the team had been identified as private military contractors hired by Coal Industries board members, and most of them were already in custody. They told her she was safe, but Emily had watched those men execute hostages with the casual efficiency of people who'd done it before. Safe felt like a word that didn't mean anything anymore. I'll get groceries, Mateo signed. You stay here, rest. Emily wanted to argue, to say she was fine, but they both knew it would be a lie. So she just nodded and let her brother take care of her like she'd been taking care of him for the past 14 years. The apartment became her entire world. She stopped watching the news. Every channel was still covering the coal industry scandal. She stopped checking her phone. Reporters called constantly, along with lawyers, federal investigators, and people claiming to be from victims' advocacy groups. She stopped doing much of anything except sitting on the couch and trying not to think about Victor Graves bleeding out under a table. By Wednesday, Mateo was getting worried. You need to talk to someone, he signed. A therapist, a doctor, someone. I'm fine. You haven't showered in 3 days. You're not fine. I'll shower tomorrow. Em. Mateo sat down in front of her, forcing her to look at him. I know what trauma looks like. I lived through it too, remember? After the accident, when I lost my hearing? I did exactly what you're doing now. I hid. I pretended everything was okay, and it made everything worse. Emily's eyes stung. I don't know how to be the person everyone thinks I am. What person? The hero. The brave waitress who saved everyone. People keep calling me that, and I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm going to throw up every time I think about that night. Then you don't have to be that person. You can just be Emily, the one who's scared and traumatized and trying to figure out what comes next. What does come next? Mateo shrugged. I don't know, but you can't figure it out from this couch. He was right. Emily knew he was right, but knowing something and doing something were very different things. That night she forced herself to shower. It was harder than it should have been. The water hitting her skin felt wrong somehow, too loud and too much. But she made it through, and afterward she felt marginally more human. She was drying her hair when someone knocked on the door. Emily froze. It was almost 10 at night. Who would be knocking this late? Matteo was already asleep on the couch. He'd been staying over every night since Friday, worried about leaving her alone. Emily crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Nathan Cole stood in the hallway, looking as exhausted as she felt. For a long moment, Emily considered not answering. She considered pretending she wasn't home, but something made her unlock the door anyway. "What are you doing here?" she asked quietly, not opening it all the way. "I know I shouldn't have come. I know you probably don't want to see me, but I didn't know where else to go." He looked terrible, worse than he had at Millennium Park. His eyes were red-rimmed like he'd been crying or hadn't slept, or both. "What happened?" "Can I come in? Please, just for a few minutes." Emily glanced back at Matteo, still sleeping. She stepped into the hallway and closed the door behind her, not ready to let Nathan into her space, but not heartless enough to turn him away entirely. "Talk," she said. Nathan leaned against the wall like standing upright was taking all his remaining energy. "The board voted me out this morning. I'm no longer CEO of Cole Industries. They're saying I orchestrated the whole hostage situation as a publicity stunt to distract from the fraud allegations." "That's insane, is it? I'm the one who agreed to meet Victor Graves. I'm the one who knew about the Talon 9 defects and didn't go public. From their perspective, I'm either complicit in the cover-up or I'm trying to play the victim to avoid accountability." He laughed bitterly. "Maybe they're right." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're the only person who was there. You saw what actually happened. You know I didn't plan any of it." Emily crossed her arms. "So what? You want me to make a statement defending you?" "No, Nathan's voice cracked. "I needed to talk to someone who understood. Everyone else in my life either thinks I'm a criminal or they're too busy covering their own asses to care. My ex-wife filed for full custody this morning. My lawyers are telling me to prepare for criminal charges. And I can't." He was crying now. Not dramatically, just silent tears running down his face while he stared at the hallway carpet. Emily had spent 3 days hiding in her apartment feeling sorry for herself. Here was Nathan Cole, who'd had everything and lost it all, breaking down in her hallway at 10 o'clock at night. She should probably feel vindicated. He'd helped cover up corporate fraud that could have killed people. He deserved to lose everything, but all she felt was tired. "Come inside," she said. Nathan looked up, surprised. "You don't have to. I know. Come inside anyway." She led him into her tiny studio apartment. Matteo stirred on the couch but didn't wake. Emily pointed Nathan toward the small table near the window and went to make tea because tea was what you did when someone was having a breakdown and you didn't know what else to offer. They sat across from each other, steam rising from mismatched mugs, the silence stretching out between them. "I've been thinking about Victor," Nathan said finally. "About what he said in the restaurant. He told me I had chances to fix the problem and I didn't take them. He was right. So fix it now." "How? I don't have access to company files anymore. I don't have authority to issue recalls or ground the Talon 9 fleet. I'm just—" He gestured vaguely at himself. "Nobody. You're not nobody. You're a witness. You have information. Use it." "I'm planning to. I'm meeting with federal prosecutors next week. I'm going to tell them everything I know about who made the decision to bury the reports, who threatened the engineers, all of it." "Good. It means I'll probably go to prison." Emily sipped her tea. "Will you?" "My lawyers think so. Conspiracy to commit fraud, obstruction of justice. The fact that I eventually cooperated might reduce my sentence, but—" He trailed off. "Cameron's going to grow up knowing his father is a criminal." "Cameron's going to grow up knowing his father tried to make things right. That's not nothing." "It's not enough, though. It doesn't bring Victor back. It doesn't undo the damage." "No," Emily agreed. "It doesn't, but it's what you've got to work with." Nathan stared into his tea like it might have answers. "How are you doing this?" "Doing what?" "Holding it together, moving forward. You went through the same nightmare I did, but you're not falling apart." Emily almost laughed. "I haven't left my apartment in 3 days. I can't sleep without having nightmares about gunshots. Yesterday I had a panic attack because someone knocked on my door. I'm absolutely falling apart. I'm just doing it quietly." That seemed to surprise him. "You seemed so calm. At the restaurant. Even when everything was chaos, you just handled it." I was terrified every single second. I just didn't have time to process the terror until afterward. She set down her mug. You want to know the truth? I don't feel like a hero. I feel like a fraud. Everyone's calling me brave, and I can't even go outside to buy groceries. You walked 50 hostages out of an active crisis situation while holding what you thought was a bomb. That's pretty much the definition of brave. Or stupid. I still haven't decided which. They sat in silence for a while. Matteo shifted on the couch, mumbling something in his sleep. Is that your brother? Nathan asked quietly. Emily nodded. Matteo, he's been staying here, making sure I don't completely lose it. You're lucky to have him. I know. Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened. My lawyers. Again, they want me to stop talking to anyone connected to the case. That includes you, technically. Then why are you here? Because I'm tired of doing what lawyers tell me to do. That's how I ended up in this mess in the first place. He stood up, setting his untouched tea on the table. I should go. I'm sorry for showing up like this. I just needed... I know, Emily said. It's fine. At the door, Nathan paused. The $50,000. I transferred it to a legal defense fund for whistleblowers. People like Victor who try to expose corporate fraud and get destroyed for it. I thought you'd want to know. Something loosened in Emily's chest. Thank you. Thank you for not calling the police when I showed up at your door crying. The night's still young. Nathan smiled slightly, the first real smile she'd seen from him, and left. Emily locked the door behind him and stood there for a moment, processing. Then she went back to the couch and curled up next to Matteo, who woke up enough to put an arm around her before drifting back to sleep. For the first time in 3 days, Emily didn't have nightmares. Thursday morning brought a new problem. Emily's landlord called to inform her that several residents had complained about the media presence outside the building. If it didn't stop soon, he'd have to ask her to leave. You're evicting me because reporters are camped outside? I'm not evicting you. I'm asking you to solve the problem. How am I supposed to solve reporters? Talk to them. Give them their interview, whatever they want. Just make them go away. Emily hung up and screamed into a pillow. Matteo, making breakfast in her tiny kitchen, looked over and signed. Landlord? Threatening to kick me out if I don't deal with the reporters. So deal with them. I don't want to talk to reporters. Then you'll get evicted. Those are your options. Emily knew he was right. She'd been avoiding this for days, but avoiding things didn't make them go away. It just made them worse. She picked up her phone and scrolled through the messages until she found the one from Jennifer Reeves, the 60 Minutes producer. Before she could second-guess herself, she called the number. Reeves answered on the first ring. Miss Harper, I'm glad you called. I'll do the interview, but I have conditions. I'm listening. No payment. I don't want money for this, and I want to talk about Victor Graves. Not just what happened in the restaurant, but why it happened. The corporate fraud, the cover-up, all of it. There was a pause. We can work with that. When are you available? As soon as possible. The reporters outside my building are getting me evicted. We can have a crew there this afternoon. Would that work? Emily's stomach dropped. This afternoon. That was real. That was happening. Yes, she heard herself say. That works. After she hung up, Matteo came over and hugged her. Proud of you, Em. I haven't done anything yet. You made a choice. That's something. The 60 Minutes crew arrived at 3 o'clock. They were professional and efficient, transforming Emily's tiny apartment into a makeshift studio in under an hour. Jennifer Reeves turned out to be a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. We'll start with the basics, she explained while a technician clipped a microphone to Emily's collar. What you were doing at the restaurant when you first noticed something was wrong. Then we'll move into the more complex questions about the hostage situation and what you witnessed. Emily nodded, her throat dry. The camera's red light felt like a threat. Ready? Reeves asked. No, Emily wanted to say. I'm not ready. I'll never be ready. Instead, she said, yes. The interview lasted 2 hours. Reeves asked about everything. The sign language, Victor's desperation, the fake tactical team, Nathan's role in the fraud. Emily answered as honestly as she could, though her voice shook through most of it. You've been called a hero, Reeves said at one point. How does that feel? Emily thought about the question. Uncomfortable. I didn't do anything heroic. I saw someone asking for help and I tried to help. That shouldn't be heroic. That should be normal. But it's not normal. Most people in that situation would have run. Maybe they would have. I don't know. I wasn't thinking about being brave or heroic. I was just thinking that if I didn't do something, people were going to die. Emily paused. Victor Graves died anyway. So I'm not sure what my heroism actually accomplished. You saved the other hostages. The other hostages shouldn't have needed saving. They should have been able to eat dinner without getting caught in a corporate conspiracy. Emily's voice was getting stronger now, the anger cutting through her fear. Victor Graves tried to expose the truth about defective military equipment. He tried to do the right thing, and the people responsible for the fraud sent armed men to kill everyone who knew about it. That's what people should be talking about, not whether I'm brave or not. Reeves leaned forward slightly. What do you want to say to the people watching this? Emily looked directly into the camera. I want them to know that Victor Graves died trying to protect pilots he'd never met. He died trying to prevent a tragedy that hadn't happened yet. And the executives at Coal Industries knew the equipment was defective, and they covered it up anyway because fixing it would cost money. She took a breath. I'm not a hero. Victor was. And he's dead because corporate profit mattered more than human lives. When they finished filming, Reeves shook Emily's hand. That was powerful. Thank you for your honesty. When will it air? Sunday night. We'll send you a link beforehand so you can watch it if you want. After the crew left, Emily sat on her couch feeling hollowed out. Mateo brought her water and sat beside her without saying anything, which was exactly what she needed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. I heard you're doing the 60 Minutes interview. Thank you for telling Victor's story. Emily stared at the message. She hadn't told Nathan about the interview. How did he know? She texted back. How did you hear about it? The producers contacted me for comment. I declined. This should be your story, not mine. It's not my story either. It's Victor's. Then make sure people remember that. Emily set down her phone. Outside her window, she could see the reporters were already packing up their equipment. Word must have spread that she'd given an interview. They'd gotten what they wanted. Friday and Saturday passed in a blur of anxiety. Emily forced herself to leave the apartment, just small trips at first, to the corner store for milk, to the laundromat. Baby steps toward rejoining the world. Each time got slightly easier. The panic attacks didn't go away, but she learned to breathe through them, to recognize when one was coming and find a quiet place to ride it out. Sunday evening, she and Mateo ordered pizza and sat down to watch the interview. Emily had debated whether to watch it all, but Mateo insisted she should see how it turned out. The segment opened with footage from the restaurant, the shattered windows, the police tape, the chaos. Then Emily's face filled the screen, looking pale and determined. I almost didn't watch this, the Emily on screen said, but I think people need to hear what actually happened that night. For the next 40 minutes, Emily watched herself tell Victor Graves' story. The producers had done their research. They'd included footage of Victor, interviews with his family, documentation of the Talon 9 defects. They'd woven Emily's testimony together with the larger narrative of corporate corruption and whistleblower retaliation. When it ended, Mateo signed, "You did good, Em. I talked too much. I got emotional. You were real. That matters more than being perfect." Emily's phone started buzzing immediately. Messages from people she hadn't talked to in years. Former co-workers. High school friends. Her aunt in Wisconsin, who only called on birthdays. And one from Nathan. You honored his memory. Thank you. Monday morning, Emily woke up to discover the interview had gone viral. Clips were all over social media. News outlets were writing articles about it. Hashtag Justice for Victor was trending on Twitter. More importantly, 3 more former Coal Industries engineers had come forward with their own stories of being threatened and fired for reporting safety concerns. The Department of Justice announced they were expanding their investigation. Emily's phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Harper? This is Sarah Chen from the police department. We met the night of the incident. I remember. I wanted to let you know we've made arrests in connection with the tactical team that stormed the restaurant. 6 men so far, including the team leader. They're being charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and a list of other crimes. Emily's breath caught. Who hired them? 3 Coal Industries board members. We have documentation proving they authorized the hit. They're in custody too. What about the others? The board members who just covered up the fraud but didn't try to kill anyone? Federal prosecutors are building cases. It's going to take time, but they're not getting away with it. After Chen hung up, Emily sat with the news for a long moment. Justice was happening. Slowly, imperfectly, but happening. Her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized. Dennis, her former manager from Vertice. Em, you got a minute? Sure. What's up? So, the restaurant's not reopening. The owner's selling the building, which means we're all out of jobs. Emily had expected this, but it still stung. That sucks. I'm sorry. Yeah, but listen, I'm starting a new place, smaller, more casual. I want you to come work for me. Head server position, better pay than you were making at Vertice. Dennis, thank you, but I don't know if I can go back to serving tables. Not after everything. Think about it at least. You were good at the job. You deserve to keep doing it if you want to. After they hung up, Emily found Mateo and signed, Dennis offered me a job at his new restaurant. You going to take it? I don't know. Part of me wants to. It's familiar, safe. And the other part? Emily thought about the 60 Minutes interview, about the messages flooding her phone from people thanking her for speaking up, about Victor Graves dying in that restaurant because he'd tried to tell the truth. The other part thinks maybe I should do something that matters more than serving steaks to rich people. Like what? I have no idea. But that wasn't quite true. An idea had been forming in the back of her mind for days now, too fragile to speak out loud yet. Tuesday morning, Emily called the number for the whistleblower defense fund Nathan had donated to. A tired-sounding woman answered. My name is Emily Harper. I was involved in the Vertice restaurant incident. Oh yes, we've been following your story. How can we help you? I want to help you. I want to work for the fund, or volunteer, or I don't know exactly, but I want to do something for people like Victor Graves, people who try to expose the truth and get destroyed for it. There was a pause. We don't have a lot of funding for new positions. Most of our staff are volunteers. I can volunteer. I need to do something that matters, and this matters. Can you come in for an interview? Tomorrow, maybe? Emily agreed and hung up, her heart pounding. This was insane. She had no experience with nonprofits or legal advocacy or any of the skills they probably needed. But she also knew what it felt like to be in a room with someone desperately trying to tell the truth while powerful people tried to silence them. That had to count for something. Wednesday, she took the train to the fund's office, a cramped space above a dry cleaner in a not-great neighborhood. The director, a woman named Patricia Liu, was in her 60s and looked like she'd been fighting losing battles for most of them. Why do you want to work here? Patricia asked after they'd made awkward small talk about the weather. Because Victor Graves died trying to do the right thing. And I was there, and I can't just go back to my normal life and pretend it didn't happen. We can't pay you. I know. The work is depressing. We lose more cases than we win. Most whistleblowers end up bankrupt and unemployable even when they're vindicated. I know that too. Patricia studied her. You're the waitress. From the restaurant. Yes. You know you could be making a lot of money right now? Book deals, speaking engagements, all that? I'm aware. So why are you here instead of cashing in on your 15 minutes? Emily thought about that. Because cashing in feels like I'd be profiting from Victor's death. And I don't want his death to be for nothing. I want it to mean something. I want to help make sure the next person who tries to expose the truth has a better chance of surviving it. Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, a tired, sad smile that had seen too much but hadn't quite given up yet. You can start Monday. We'll train you on intake procedures and case documentation. It's mostly answering phones and filing paperwork at first, but if you stick around, there's room to do more. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You might hate it. Emily walked out of the office feeling lighter than she had in days. She had a purpose now, a direction. It wasn't much, but it was something. Her phone buzzed. Nathan. Can we talk? In person? They met at the same bench near Cloudgate where they'd talked before. Nathan looked better than last time, still exhausted, still stressed, but more present somehow. I'm testifying before the grand jury next week, he said without preamble. Against the board members. My lawyers think it'll help my case, show I'm cooperating. Will it? Maybe. Maybe not. But it's the right thing to do regardless. He paused. I wanted to thank you for the interview, for making sure people knew Victor's name. His family reached out to me. They said it helped to know he didn't die for nothing. He didn't. The investigation's expanding. More engineers are coming forward. The truth's coming out. Because of you. Because of him. I just made sure people listened. They sat in silence for a while, watching tourists take selfies with the bean sculpture. What are you going to do? Emily asked. After the trial? After everything? Nathan stared at his hands. I don't know. I've been Nathan Cole, CEO, for so long, I'm not sure who I am without it. My entire identity was wrapped up in that company. Now it's gone, and I'm just... He gestured vaguely. Some guy who screwed up really badly and is trying to fix it. That's not nothing. It's not much either. It's more than most people in your position would do. Most rich guys would hide behind lawyers and never admit fault. I don't feel particularly noble about it. I feel like a coward who waited too long to do the right thing. Yeah, well, join the club. I hid in my apartment for 3 days after the restaurant because I was too scared to face the world. We're all cowards sometimes. Nathan smiled slightly. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of pretending to be something I'm not. Emily stood up. I have to go. Starting a new volunteer job Monday, and I need to figure out what that's going to look like. Volunteer job? Whistleblower Defense Fund. Helping people who try to expose corruption. Nathan stared at her. You're really not going to cash in on any of this, are you? What would I cash in for? Money doesn't fix trauma. It just makes you traumatized with nicer furniture. That's probably the most honest thing anyone said to me in years. Emily shrugged. Honesty's kind of my thing now. Accidentally. As she walked away, Nathan called after her. Emily? She turned back. I'm glad you understood what I was signing that night. I'm glad it was you. Me too, Emily said, and meant it. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Emily volunteered at the fund 3 days a week, learning the work, talking to whistleblowers who called in desperate for help. Their stories were heartbreaking, people who'd lost everything for trying to do the right thing. But they were also inspiring. They kept fighting even when the system was stacked against them. Emily took Dennis's job offer too, working weekend shifts at his new restaurant. It was smaller, quieter, less pretentious than Vertice. She liked it better. She still had nightmares sometimes, still had panic attacks when loud noises startled her. But she was learning to live with the trauma instead of trying to outrun it. Nathan texted occasionally with updates. The grand jury had indicted 5 coal industries board members. His ex-wife had dropped the custody battle after his cooperation with prosecutors became public. He was selling his penthouse and moving to a smaller place, trying to rebuild a life that didn't revolve around money and power. How's Cameron? Emily texted one day. Confused. Angry, but we're talking about it. His therapist thinks he'll be okay eventually. Kids are resilient. So are adults, apparently. Look at you. Emily smiled at her phone. She didn't feel particularly resilient. She felt like someone who was barely holding it together most days. But maybe that was what resilience actually looked like. Not bouncing back perfectly, but just continuing to move forward even when it hurt. 2 months after the restaurant, Emily got a call from Detective Chen. The trial's starting next week for the board members. Prosecution wants to know if you'd be willing to testify. Emily's stomach dropped. About what? What you witnessed in the restaurant. Victor's state of mind, the tactical team's actions. Your testimony could help establish their intent to kill witnesses. I'll do it. You're sure? Defense attorneys are going to come at you hard. They'll try to make you look unreliable, emotional, like you're exaggerating what happened. Let them try. The trial was everything Chen had warned her about, and worse. The defense painted Emily as an attention seeker who'd fabricated details to make herself look heroic. They questioned her memory, her motives, her credibility. Emily sat in the witness box and told the truth anyway. About Victor's desperation. About the fake tactical team executing hostages. About Nathan trying to protect people even when it meant risking his own life. When she stepped down, she was shaking and exhausted and wanted to throw up. But she'd done it. Nathan testified the next day. Emily watched from the gallery as he methodically explained the fraud, the cover-up, The board's decision to silence Victor Graves permanently. He didn't try to minimize his own role. He admitted everything. The jury deliberated for 6 days. When they came back, the verdict was guilty on all counts for 3 of the 5 board members. Partial conviction for the other 2. It wasn't perfect justice, but it was justice. Emily was leaving the courthouse when she saw Victor's sister waiting by the entrance. They'd met once during the investigation, a brief encounter that had been awkward and painful for both of them. "Miss Harper," the woman said, "I wanted to thank you for what you said in there, for making sure people knew Victor was trying to help. I'm sorry I couldn't save him." "You did save him. Not his life, but his name, his reason for doing it. That matters to us." They stood there for a moment, 2 strangers connected by tragedy, and Emily realized something. She'd spent months thinking her actions at the restaurant hadn't mattered because Victor had died anyway. But maybe saving someone's memory was its own kind of rescue. "He was brave," Emily said. "Your brother. He was really brave." "So were you." Emily didn't argue this time. Maybe they were both right. The sentencing hearing happened on a Tuesday in November, 6 months after the restaurant. Emily sat in the same courtroom where she'd testified, watching 3 former coal industries board members stand before the judge who would decide how many years they'd spend in prison. Richard Kellerman, the former CFO, looked smaller than he had during the trial. His expensive suit couldn't hide the way his shoulders slumped. Sarah Vance, who'd been VP of Operations, kept her chin up, but her hands shook when she gripped the defense table. Marcus Webb, the oldest of the 3, just looked tired. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Helena Ostroff. She'd presided over the entire trial with an efficiency that bordered on ruthless. "The court has reviewed the pre-sentencing reports and victim impact statements," Judge Ostroff began. "Before I hand down sentences, I want to be clear about what happened here. This wasn't a case of poor judgment or corporate negligence. This was a deliberate conspiracy to conceal life-threatening defects in military equipment, followed by a conspiracy to commit murder when that concealment was threatened." Emily watched the defendants' faces. Only Webb looked like he was actually listening. The other 2 stared at nothing. "Mr. Kellerman, you authorized payment to a private military contractor knowing their purpose was to eliminate witnesses. Ms. Vance, you provided building schematics and security codes to facilitate that operation. Mr. Webb, you personally ordered the destruction of engineering reports documenting the Talon 9 defects." The judge paused, letting the words settle. "Victor Graves died trying to prevent a tragedy that hadn't happened yet. He died because you valued profit over human life. That is not forgivable." Kellerman got 23 years, Vance got 19. Webb, who'd cooperated more extensively with prosecutors, got 12. When the marshal led them away in handcuffs, Emily felt something loosen in her chest. Not satisfaction exactly, not closure, just a sense that the universe had tilted slightly back toward balance. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Emily had learned to navigate them by now. Head down, no comment, keep walking. But one voice cut through the noise. "Miss Harper, how do you feel about Nathan Cole avoiding prison time?" Emily stopped. "What?" A reporter pushed forward, microphone extended. "Nathan Cole accepted a plea deal this morning. 2 years probation, community service, and $1 million fine. No jail time. Do you think that's fair?" The world seemed to tilt sideways. Nathan had told her the prosecutors were considering a deal, but he'd said nothing was final. He'd said he expected to do at least some prison time. I need to go." She pushed through the crowd and walked for 6 blocks before her hands stopped shaking enough to pull out her phone. She called Nathan. It went straight to voicemail. "You took a plea deal without telling me? Call me back." 20 minutes later, her phone rang. "I'm sorry," Nathan said immediately. "I was going to tell you, everything happened so fast and I didn't know how to explain." "Try. Can we meet? In person?" "No. Talk now or don't talk at all." There was a long pause. Emily could hear traffic in the background, the murmur of voices. He was outside somewhere. "The prosecutors offered me immunity if I testified against the board members," Nathan said finally. "Full immunity, no charges. But I couldn't. I was part of it. I knew about the defects. I voted against fixing them. Taking immunity felt like I was claiming I was innocent when I wasn't." "So you took probation instead." "It was the compromise. I admit guilt, I accept consequences, but I don't go to prison. My lawyer said it was the best possible outcome. For you. Yes? For me. I'm sorry if that disappoints you, Emily, but I have a son who needs his father. I can't help anyone from inside a cell. Emily leaned against a building, suddenly exhausted. You're right. You're absolutely right. I wish you'd told me. Would it have changed anything? No, but I wouldn't have found out from a reporter. I'm sorry, really. Can I buy you coffee? Explain properly? Emily considered hanging up, considered telling him to handle his own guilt without dragging her into it. But something in his voice stopped her. Fine. The place on Randolph. 1 hour. The coffee shop was crowded with the lunch rush. Nathan was already there when Emily arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups in front of him. He'd lost weight since the trial. His face had new lines around the eyes. I got you a latte, he said as she sat down. Is that still what you drink? How do you know what I drink? You mentioned it once, months ago. I remember things. Emily took the cup without commenting. The coffee was good, which annoyed her. It would be easier to stay angry if the coffee was bad. Talk, she said. Nathan wrapped his hands around his own cup like he needed the warmth. The plea deal came together last week. My lawyers had been negotiating for months, but the prosecutors finally agreed after I gave them documentation about offshore accounts the board members used to pay the contractors. Where did you get that documentation? I kept copies. Before the hostage situation, when I still thought I could protect the company by protecting myself. Insurance, basically. He laughed bitterly. Turns out insurance against your own crimes is called evidence. And you traded it for probation. Yes. 2 years supervised probation, 500 hours of community service, $1 million fine that I can barely afford now that most of my assets are frozen or seized, and a felony conviction on my record for the rest of my life. But no prison. But no prison, Nathan agreed. Because my son is 7 years old and he's already confused and angry about why his dad's company is on the news and why people say mean things about our family. If I went to prison, he'd grow up visiting me behind glass. I can't do that to him. Emily understood. Of course she understood. But understanding didn't make it feel fair that Nathan got probation while Victor Graves was dead. What about the Talon 9? She asked. The actual problem that started all of this? Grounded. Every unit. The military suspended the entire program pending redesign. It's going to cost the government billions, but at least no one will die because of defective equipment. That's something, I guess. It's not enough. Nothing's enough. But it's what we managed to salvage from the wreckage. They drank their coffee in silence for a while. Around them, people laughed and talked and lived their normal lives, oblivious to the conversation happening in the corner. I saw you testify, Nathan said eventually. At the trial, you were incredible. I was terrified. You didn't look it. You looked strong, certain. I threw up in the courthouse bathroom afterward. Bravery and nausea aren't mutually exclusive. Emily almost smiled. Is that what you tell yourself? Every day. Nathan set down his cup. I'm selling everything. The penthouse, the vacation properties, the art collection. Everything that's not seized is going on the market. I'm moving to a regular apartment. Getting a regular job. Doing what? I don't know yet. Something that doesn't involve billion-dollar defense contracts. He paused. I was thinking maybe teaching, business ethics, ironically enough. Some community colleges might hire me as a cautionary tale. That's either really self-aware or really self-pitying. Can it be both? This time Emily did smile. You're learning. Nathan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and winced. My ex-wife. She's supposed to drop Cameron off in an hour, and she's asking if I've finalized the apartment lease yet. You haven't? I've been looking, but everything's either too expensive or too depressing or both. He looked at Emily. You know anything about finding affordable housing in Chicago? I live in a converted warehouse that smells like mildew. I'm not exactly a real estate expert. Still, you're better at functioning like a normal person than I am. Emily thought about that. There's a building near me, nothing fancy, but it's safe and the landlord's not terrible. I could text you the information. You'd do that? Don't make it weird. I'm just sending you a phone number. But it felt like more than that. It felt like forgiveness, or at least the beginning of it. The next few weeks were strange. Emily kept volunteering at the Whistleblower Fund, kept working weekend shifts at Dennis's restaurant, kept trying to build a life that made sense after everything had fallen apart. Nathan texted occasionally with updates. He'd gotten the apartment near Emily's building. Cameron seemed to be adjusting. His first community service shift picking up trash in Grant Park had been humbling. They didn't talk about the restaurant. They didn't talk about the trial. They just existed in parallel orbits, two people trying to figure out what normal meant when nothing felt normal anymore. Then December arrived, and with it a new problem. Patricia Liu called Emily into her office at the fund with an expression that meant either very good news or very bad news. The board approved funding for a new position, Patricia said without preamble. Full-time case coordinator, $40,000 a year plus benefits. It's not much, but it's real money. Emily's heart jumped. That's amazing. Who are you hiring? You, if you want it. The words took a moment to process. Me? You've been volunteering here for 5 months. You're good with people. You understand what whistleblowers are going through because you lived it, and you're not burned out yet, which puts you ahead of half our staff. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Also, donors love you. Ever since the 60 Minutes interview, donations have tripled. People want to support the organization that Emily Harper works for. I'm not qualified. I don't have a degree in anything useful. I was a waitress. You were a waitress who walked 50 hostages out of a hostage situation. That's better than any degree. Patricia slid a folder across the desk. Job description, salary details, start date. Think about it. Let me know by Friday. Emily took the folder home and stared at it for 2 hours. $40,000 a year was more than she'd ever made. Benefits meant health insurance, which she hadn't had since she aged out of her parents' plan. It meant stability, security, a future. It also meant giving up the possibility of something else, something bigger. She'd been getting offers, speaking engagements, consulting opportunities, a literary agent who wanted her to write a book about the restaurant. All of them paid more than $40,000, but none of them felt right. They all felt like profiting from Victor's death. What do you think? She signed to Mateo over dinner. I think you already know what you're going to say. Humor me. Mateo set down his fork. I think you've spent your whole life being invisible because it felt safe. And then one night you weren't invisible anymore, and it was terrifying. But it also woke something up in you. And now you have to decide if you're going to go back to safe or if you're going to keep being awake. That's annoyingly insightful. I have hidden depths. Emily threw a napkin at him. She accepted the job on Thursday, one day before Patricia's deadline. When she told Nathan, he insisted on taking her out to celebrate. This feels inappropriate, Emily said as they sat down at a small Italian place that definitely wasn't Vertice. You're on probation. I'm supposed to be moving on with my life. We shouldn't be having dinner together. We're two people eating pasta. That's not a crime. Yet, Nathan laughed. It was strange hearing him laugh. She'd seen him terrified, desperate, guilty, angry. But laughter was new. They ordered food and talked about inconsequential things. Cameron's upcoming school play, Mateo's classes at community college, whether deep dish or thin crust was real pizza. Normal conversation, easy conversation. Can I ask you something? Nathan said eventually. You're going to regardless. Why did you turn down all those other offers? The book deals, the speaking fees? You could be making serious money right now. Emily twirled pasta on her fork. Because it felt wrong, like I'd be using Victor's death as a launching pad for my career. But working at the Whistleblower Fund doesn't feel that way? No, because I'm helping people like Victor. I'm doing something that might actually prevent the next tragedy instead of just profiting from the last one. Nathan was quiet for a moment. I wish I'd thought like that before everything fell apart. Maybe Victor would still be alive. Maybe. Or maybe the board would have found a different way to silence him. You can't change what happened. You can only try to be better going forward. Is that what you tell yourself? Every single day. They finished dinner and walked back through the cold December streets. Chicago was decorated for Christmas. Lights strung across buildings, trees and storefront windows, the smell of roasted chestnuts from street vendors. I hate this time of year, Nathan said suddenly. Why? Because it's supposed to be about family and togetherness, and all I can think about is how I almost lost everything. How I almost never saw my son again because I was too cowardly to do the right thing sooner. Emily stopped walking. You need to stop punishing yourself. Why? I deserve it. Maybe. But punishing yourself doesn't help anyone. Victor's still dead. The pilots who might have died from faulty equipment are still at risk until the Talon 9 is fixed. Your guilt is just self-indulgence dressed up as penance. Nathan stared at her. That's harsh. You asked for honesty. I'm being honest. I thought we were having a nice dinner. We were. Now we're having a real conversation. Emily shoved her hands in her pockets against the cold. You want to make things right? Stop wallowing in how terrible you feel and start actually fixing things. Testify at more hearings. Help other whistleblowers. Use whatever influence you have left to push for stronger protections for people who expose corporate fraud. Do something useful instead of just feeling bad. I'm trying. Try harder. She walked away before he could respond, her breath forming clouds in the freezing air. She made it half a block before she heard him running after her. Emily, wait. She turned. Nathan stood there looking lost and cold and younger than 32. You're right, he said. About all of it. I've been so focused on my own guilt that I forgot the point is to actually help people, not just feel terrible about not helping them sooner. So what are you going to do about it? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Good. They stood there in the cold, two broken people who'd survived the same nightmare and were still trying to figure out what came after. Can I still text you? Nathan asked. When I figure out what I'm doing, get your opinion? If you want advice, talk to Patricia at the fund. She's been doing this for decades. I want your advice. You're the one who walked out of that restaurant holding a fake bomb. You understand things other people don't. Emily sighed. Fine. You can text me, but if you start getting weird about it, I'm blocking your number. Define weird. You'll know it when you're doing it. Nathan smiled. Deal. Christmas came and went quietly. Emily spent it with Mateo, cooking an elaborate dinner that they mostly burned but ate anyway. Nathan sent a text on Christmas Eve. Cameron asked if the lady from the restaurant is real or if he imagined her. I said, you're real. Merry Christmas. Emily sent back, tell him I'm real. Merry Christmas to you both. It was a small exchange, meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But it felt like something shifting. Like maybe they could actually be friends instead of just two people connected by trauma. January brought bitter cold and a new development. The Department of Defense announced they were implementing new whistleblower protections specifically because of the Talon 9 scandal. Engineers who reported safety concerns would have legal protection from retaliation. Companies that threatened or fired whistleblowers would lose federal contracts. Patricia called it the Victor Graves Protection Act, unofficially. The official name was something bureaucratic and boring, but everyone at the fund knew who it was really for. This is because of you, Patricia told Emily, because you made sure people knew his name, because you testified, because you gave that interview. It's because Victor died trying to do the right thing. Both things can be true. Emily thought about that a lot over the next few weeks. How tragedy and progress weren't opposites. How Victor's death had been horrible and senseless, and also somehow catalyzed changes that might save other lives. How nothing was simple or clean or fair. Nathan started volunteering at the fund in February. He came in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, helping with administrative work, talking to whistleblowers who called in desperate and scared. He was surprisingly good at it. You understand what they're going through, Emily observed one afternoon while they sorted through case files. I am what they're going through, just from the other side. Nathan stapled documents together with more force than necessary. I was the executive who let the cover-up happen. Now I'm trying to help the people who exposed the cover-ups. It's ironic. It's growth. It's too little, too late. Stop that. Stop what? The self-pity thing. You're doing good work now. Let that be enough. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of everyone, including me, using guilt as an excuse not to move forward. They went back to filing in silence, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that happens between people who've stopped performing for each other. March brought Cameron to the fund. Nathan had mentioned wanting his son to understand what he was doing with his community service hours, and Emily had suggested bringing him by. She'd expected a shy kid, maybe scared of the woman from the news. Instead, Cameron Cole burst into the office like a small tornado, talking nonstop about his science project and his missing tooth. And had Emily seen the new dinosaur movie because it was awesome, but also scientifically inaccurate? Cam, breathe, Nathan said. I'm breathing. I'm just also talking. People can do both. Cameron turned to Emily. You're the one who saved my dad. I helped. A lot of people helped. My dad says you were really brave. He says you picked up a bomb even though you were scared. Emily glanced at Nathan, who looked slightly embarrassed. I was very scared, Emily told Cameron. But sometimes you do things even when you're scared because they need to be done. Like going to the dentist? Exactly like going to the dentist. Cameron considered this. My dad cries at the dentist. I do not cry, Nathan protested. You got all watery-eyed last time. That was the numbing injection. It's a physical response. Emily laughed, watching father and son bicker with the easy affection of people who knew each other well. This was what she'd saved that night in the restaurant. Not just Nathan's life, but Cameron's relationship with his father. That had to count for something. Want to see what we do here? Emily asked Cameron. She showed him around the small office, explaining in simple terms that they helped people who told the truth even when it was hard. Cameron listened with the intense focus of a 7-year-old trying to understand something important. Like my dad, Cameron said when she finished. Like your dad, Emily agreed. He says he made mistakes, but he's trying to fix them. That's exactly right. Cameron looked up at her with Nathan's eyes. Are you my dad's friend? Emily glanced at Nathan, who was very carefully not looking at either of them. Yes, she said. I think I am. April brought an unexpected phone call. Emily was at her apartment, half-heartedly cleaning, when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. Miss Harper, this is James Graves, Victor's brother. Emily sat down hard on her couch. Hi, how are you? I'm calling because our family is planning a memorial for Victor. It's been almost a year and we wanted to do something to honor his memory. We were hoping you might speak. Say a few words about what happened. Emily's throat tightened. I don't know if I'm the right person. You're exactly the right person. You were there. You understood what he was trying to do. You made sure people knew. When is it? May 15th, 1 year exactly. The anniversary. Of course. How had Emily not been tracking that? I'll be there, she said. The memorial was held at a small community center on the south side. Maybe 50 people showed up, Victor's family, former colleagues, a few reporters. Nathan came, sitting in the back row like he didn't want to intrude. Emily spoke for 5 minutes. She talked about Victor's desperation to expose the truth, his courage in the face of people who wanted him silenced, his death and what it had meant and what it had changed. Victor Graves died trying to prevent a tragedy, she said, looking at his family in the front row. He died because he valued other people's lives more than his own safety. That's not just brave. That's extraordinary. And I really hope, that the changes that came from his death mean other people won't have to make the same sacrifice. After the memorial, Victor's mother approached Emily. She was small and gray-haired with eyes that had seen too much grief. Thank you, she said simply, for being there, for understanding. I'm sorry I couldn't save him. You saved his memory. That matters too. Emily hugged this woman she barely knew, both of them crying, both of them carrying pieces of the same tragedy. Nathan found her afterward, standing outside in the spring sunshine. You did good in there, he said. I feel like a fraud, like I'm taking credit for his courage. You're honoring his courage. That's different. They stood in silence for a while. It's been a year, Emily said eventually. A whole year since everything fell apart. Are you better now than you were? Emily thought about that. I don't know if better is the right word. Different, maybe. I still have nightmares sometimes. I still panic when I hear loud noises. But I also have a job I care about. Friends I didn't have before. A purpose. That sounds like better to me. What about you? Nathan looked up at the sky. I have my son. I have work that matters. I'm not in prison. On balance, I'm luckier than I deserve to be. Stop that. What? The thing where you qualify every good thing with how you don't deserve it. You served your time, metaphorically speaking. You're allowed to be okay. When did you become my therapist? When you started needing one. Nathan smiled. You know what I realized the other day? I'm happier now than I was before. When I had everything. The company, the money, all of it. I'm happier broke and on probation doing volunteer work than I ever was as a billionaire CEO. That's either really profound or really messed up. Both. Definitely both. They walked back toward the parking lot together, the spring sun warm on their faces, the anniversary of the worst night of their lives somehow feeling less heavy than Emily had expected. Same time next year? Nathan asked. For the memorial? Same time next year, Emily agreed. It felt like a promise. Not to forget, not to move on entirely, but to remember together, to keep Victor's name alive, to make sure his death meant something. And maybe, Emily thought as she drove home through familiar Chicago streets, that was enough. Summer arrived in Chicago with the kind of oppressive heat that made the whole city feel like it was holding its breath. Emily stood outside a rundown storefront in a neighborhood that was trying to decide whether to gentrify or give up entirely, staring at the for lease sign in the window. You're insane, Mateo signed from beside her. You know that, right? Probably. You have a good job, stable income. Why would you risk that to open a restaurant? Emily didn't have a good answer. The idea had started small, just a nagging thought that wouldn't go away. What if there was a place where people like Mateo could work without constantly having to explain their deafness? What if invisibility could be a choice instead of a condition? Because I'm tired of watching other people's dreams, she signed back. I want to try building my own. With what money? Your savings account has like $4,000 in it. I'm working on that part. She'd been working on that part for 3 months, actually, writing a business plan in her spare time, researching grants and small business loans, talking to Patricia about the whistleblower reward money that technically belonged to Emily, but that she'd never felt right about touching. Victor Graves died exposing that fraud, Patricia had said when Emily brought it up. The reward was specifically for information leading to prosecution. You provided that information. The money is legally yours. It feels like blood money. Then use it for something that would have made him proud. Emily had been thinking about that conversation for weeks. What would make Victor proud? Not keeping the money locked away out of guilt. Not letting it sit unused while she convinced herself that suffering was somehow more noble than action. Maybe Victor would have wanted her to take a risk, to build something meaningful, to create opportunities for people who'd been invisible their whole lives. She pulled out her phone and called Nathan. I need advice, she said when he answered. About what? Starting a business. You used to run a billion-dollar company. How do I run a restaurant that serves deaf and hard-of-hearing workers? There was a pause. Are you serious? Unfortunately. Where are you? She told him. 20 minutes later, Nathan's car pulled up. Not the expensive sedan he used to drive, but a practical Honda that had clearly seen better days. Cameron was in the back seat, absorbed in a handheld video game. Nathan got out and looked at the storefront. This is it? This is it. 2,000 square feet, needs complete renovation. Location is decent, but not great. Rent is actually affordable. Let me see inside. Emily had gotten the keys from the leasing agent that morning. The interior was worse than the exterior. Water damage on the ceiling, outdated kitchen equipment, floors that would need to be completely replaced. But she could see past the damage. She could see tables with flashing lights instead of bells for service. She could see a staff that communicated in sign language as naturally as speaking. She could see something that mattered. Nathan walked the space slowly, occasionally tapping walls or opening cabinets. Cameron followed him, less interested in the building than in whatever was happening in his game. This is going to cost at least $150,000 to get operational, Nathan said finally. Maybe more. Do you have that kind of capital? I have the whistleblower reward, $75,000. That's half of what you need. Where's the rest coming from? Emily had been afraid he'd ask that. I was hoping you'd know where to find it. Nathan laughed. Emily, I'm on probation and basically broke. I'm not exactly connected to venture capital anymore. But you know how the system works. You know what investors want to see. I do. And what they want to see is a detailed business plan, market analysis, realistic revenue projections, and a management team with relevant experience. He paused. Do you have any of those things? I have a business plan. Sort of. Let me see it. They went to a nearby coffee shop. Cameron complained but was appeased with a cookie the size of his head, and Emily pulled up the document she'd been working on. Nathan read it in silence while Emily tried not to visibly panic. "This is actually not terrible," he said eventually. "That's your professional opinion? Not terrible? It's a compliment. Most first-time business plans are completely unusable. Yours has real thought behind it." He scrolled through pages. "Your market analysis is weak, though, and your financial projections are wildly optimistic." "How optimistic?" "You're projecting profitability in year 1. Most restaurants don't break even for 3 to 5 years." Emily's stomach sank. "So it's impossible." "I didn't say that. I said your projections need work." Nathan pulled out a pen and started making notes in the margins of her printed copy. "The concept is solid. Restaurant and culinary training program for deaf and hard-of-hearing workers. There's definitely a market for that, especially with the ADA pushing for more accessibility. But you need to be realistic about costs and timeline." They spent the next 2 hours tearing apart Emily's plan and rebuilding it. Cameron eventually abandoned his cookie to wander the coffee shop, asking other customers about their drinks with the fearless curiosity of a 7-year-old. "You need partners," Nathan said as they worked. "People with restaurant experience, sign language fluency, business management skills. You can't do this alone." "I know. I just don't know who to ask." "What about Dennis, your old manager from Vertice?" Emily blinked. She hadn't thought of Dennis. "He's running his own place now." "So? Maybe he'd want to expand or consult or invest." Nathan tapped his pen against the table. "And you need someone with actual culinary credentials. A chef who can train others, preferably someone who's deaf or has experience working with deaf staff." "Where am I supposed to find that person?" "I don't know, but that's what networking is for." Emily hated networking. It felt like begging for attention from people who didn't care. But Nathan was right. She couldn't do this alone. Over the next month, Emily talked to everyone she could think of. Dennis was interested but couldn't invest financially. A deaf chef named Marcus Rivera, who'd been working in hotel kitchens for 15 years, was interested in the training program aspect. Patricia knew a grant writer who specialized in accessibility initiatives. Nathan connected her with a small business lawyer who owed him a favor. Slowly, impossibly, the pieces started coming together. By August, Emily had a revised business plan, 3 potential partners, and applications submitted for 2 different small business grants. She also had exactly 0 guarantees that any of it would work. "This is the stupidest thing I've ever done," she told Mateo one night while they ate takeout on her apartment floor, surrounded by paperwork. "Stupider than walking out of a hostage situation with a fake bomb? Different kind of stupid. That was life or death stupid. This is financial ruin stupid." "But you're doing it anyway." "I'm doing it anyway." Mateo smiled and signed. "You know what I think? I think you spent 30 years being invisible because you were scared of what would happen if people actually saw you. And then they saw you anyway, and you survived it. Now you're not scared anymore." "I'm terrified." Terrified and not scared are different things. Terrified means you know the risks. Not scared means you're doing it anyway. Emily threw a fortune cookie at him. In September, Nathan finished his probation. Emily found out when he showed up at the whistleblower funds office with coffee and a slightly manic expression. "I'm free," he announced. "Officially, legally free. No more checking in with my probation officer. No more restrictions on my movements. Just a regular person with a felony conviction and no career prospects." "Congratulations," Emily said. "I'm celebrating by making a terrible financial decision." He set a check on her desk. $50,000. "For the restaurant. Consider me an investor." Emily stared at the check. "Nathan, you can't afford this. I sold the last of my art collection. Turns out I didn't need 12 paintings that cost more than cars. I needed to invest in something that actually matters. This might fail. You could lose everything. I already lost everything. This is me trying to build something new with what's left." Nathan sat down across from her. "Besides, you need the money. And I need to feel like I'm part of something good instead of something that killed people. You're already part of something good. You volunteer here 3 days a week." "It's not enough. I need—" He stopped, struggling for words. "I need to create something, not just help clean up messes. Does that make sense?" It did. Emily understood that feeling, the need to build instead of just repair. Okay, she said, but you're a silent partner. I don't want people thinking this is your project. Deal. Can I still help with the build-out? You know, construction? I know how to hire contractors and make sure they're not ripping you off. That's something. Emily picked up the check, this piece of paper that represented everything Nathan had left. Thank you. Really. Thank you for letting me be part of it. The restaurant build-out took 4 months and cost $30,000 more than projected. There were permit delays and supply chain issues, and a week where the entire electrical system had to be redone because the original contractor had done it wrong. Emily worked her job at the whistleblower fund during the day and supervised construction at night. She learned more about commercial kitchen equipment and fire codes and ADA compliance than she'd ever wanted to know. She had 3 separate panic attacks about money. She almost quit twice. But by January, 2 years after the hostage situation, the space was finished. The dining room had tables with built-in light panels for signaling servers. The walls displayed sign language guides and deaf culture artwork. The kitchen was designed for visual communication, lights instead of bells, clear sight lines, equipment that didn't require hearing to operate safely. Emily stood in the empty restaurant at midnight the day before opening, looking at what she'd built, and burst into tears. Matteo found her sitting on the floor crying. "What's wrong?" he signed. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. That's why I'm crying." "You're weird." "I know." They sat together in the space that had been Emily's obsession for the past year. It wasn't perfect. The floor was slightly uneven in one corner, the paint job was decent but not professional, the furniture was secondhand and mismatched. But it was real. It existed. "What are you going to call it?" Matteo asked. Emily hadn't decided yet. She'd considered dozens of names, all of them either too clever or not clever enough. "Graves," she signed finally. "I'm calling it Graves." Matteo looked surprised. "After Victor?" "After Victor. After everyone who tried to tell the truth and paid for it. After people who were silenced." She paused. "And after the idea that you can come back from the dead? That you can build something new even after everything falls apart." "That's heavy." "It's honest." The restaurant opened on a Thursday in late January. Emily had expected maybe 20 people, friends, family, the journalists who still occasionally called her for quotes about the coal industry scandal. Instead, over 100 people showed up. There were former Vertice customers who remembered Emily. There were people from the deaf community excited about the employment opportunities. There were victims advocates and whistleblower protection lawyers, and people who'd seen the 60 Minutes interview and wanted to support what Emily was doing. And in the back corner, trying to be inconspicuous, were Nathan and Cameron. Emily made her way over during a brief lull. "You came," she said. "Of course we came." Cameron was bouncing in his seat with excitement. "Dad says you built this whole place. That's so cool." "A lot of people helped build it. But it was your idea." Nathan looked around the crowded dining room with something like awe. "You actually did it. You took a crazy idea and made it real." "It might still fail. Half of new restaurants close within the first year. Stop catastrophizing and accept the win." Emily smiled. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good teacher." The first few months were chaos. Emily had never managed a restaurant before, and it showed. There were scheduling disasters and supplier issues, and a week where the dishwasher broke down completely. Marcus, the deaf chef she'd brought on, threatened to quit twice over disagreements about menu pricing. But there were also moments of perfect clarity. Watching a deaf server communicate effortlessly with hearing customers. Seeing job trainees gain confidence as they learned new skills. Reading online reviews from people who'd never experienced such accessible dining. By spring, Graves was actually making money. Not a lot, but enough to cover expenses and pay everyone's salary. The training program had 6 students enrolled. The dining room was consistently half full on weekends. It wasn't the success Emily had imagined. It was smaller, messier, more precarious. But it was real. One evening in April, Emily was closing up when someone knocked on the door. She looked up to see Victor Graves' mother standing outside. Emily let her in immediately. "Mrs. Graves, I didn't know you were coming." "I should have called. I'm sorry." The older woman looked around the restaurant with tears in her eyes. "I wanted to see what you'd built, what you'd named after my son. I hope that's okay. I probably should have asked permission. It's perfect." Mrs. Graves touched one of the tables gently. Victor would have loved this. He always said the world needed more places where people who were different could just exist without constantly having to explain themselves. They sat down at one of the tables and talked for an hour. About Victor, about the restaurant, about how grief never really went away but sometimes transformed into something bearable. "You gave his death meaning," Mrs. Graves said as she was leaving. "That's a gift. Thank you." After she left, Emily sat alone in the empty restaurant and cried for the third time since opening. Not sad tears this time. Something more complicated, grief and gratitude and exhaustion and hope all tangled together. Summer brought unexpected media attention. A food blogger wrote about Graves, and the post went viral. Suddenly, Emily was doing interviews again, explaining the concept, talking about accessibility and opportunity and second chances. "Do you ever regret it?" a reporter asked during one interview. "Turning down the book deals and speaking fees to open a restaurant instead?" Emily thought about that. "No, the book deals were about what happened to me. This is about what I'm doing with what happened to me. That feels more important." Some people say you're using Victor Graves' name to promote your business. Some people are probably right. I'm using his name because I want people to remember what he stood for. If that also happens to bring customers to a restaurant that employs people who usually get overlooked, I'm okay with that. The interview aired on a local news station. The next day, Graves was fully booked for 2 weeks straight. "This is insane," Marcus signed to Emily during a particularly chaotic dinner service. "We're going to need to hire more staff. Can we afford more staff? Can we afford not to?" They hired 3 more servers and a second-line cook. The training program expanded to 12 students. Emily stopped working at the Whistleblower Fund full-time and went part-time instead, unable to give up the work, but unable to do both jobs at full capacity. "You're spreading yourself too thin," Patricia warned. "I know, but I can't choose between them. They're both important." "Then you need to find balance before you burn out completely." Emily knew Patricia was right. She was working 14-hour days, sleeping 5 hours a night, running on coffee and anxiety. It wasn't sustainable. But she didn't know how to stop. Nathan found her one night in August, asleep at one of Graves's tables with her laptop still open. He shook her awake gently. "Emily, you can't keep doing this." She blinked at him groggily. "Doing what?" "Working yourself to death. You've been here since 6 this morning. It's almost midnight. The quarterly taxes are due. I need to finish the paperwork." "The paperwork can wait. You need sleep." "I'll sleep when things calm down." Nathan sat down across from her. "Things aren't going to calm down. This is what running a business looks like: constant crisis management and never enough time. If you don't set boundaries now, you'll destroy yourself." "Easy for you to say. You had people to delegate to when you ran Coal Industries. And look how that turned out. I delegated so much I stopped paying attention to what was actually happening. I trusted the wrong people to make the right choices, and it got someone killed." Nathan's voice was quiet but firm. "You don't have to make my mistakes. You can build something different." "How?" "By accepting that you can't do everything, by letting other people help, by trusting that the restaurant and the fund will survive even if you're not personally controlling every single detail." Emily wanted to argue, but exhaustion made honesty easier. "I'm scared," she admitted. "If I'm not constantly watching, something will go wrong. The restaurant will fail. The fund will lose donors. Everything I've built will fall apart. Maybe it will. Or maybe you've already built something strong enough to stand on its own." Nathan reached across the table and closed her laptop. "Go home. Sleep. Tomorrow, we're going to figure out how to make this actually sustainable." The next day, Nathan helped Emily create a real organizational structure. They hired a part-time bookkeeper for Graves. They brought on a volunteer coordinator at the fund to handle some of Patricia's workload. They set actual business hours and stuck to them. It was uncomfortable at first. Emily kept wanting to check in to make sure things were running properly without her constant supervision. But slowly, she learned to let go. And the world didn't end. September marked 2 years since Emily had started at the Whistleblower Fund, and Patricia threw a small celebration. Nothing fancy, just cake in the break room and people sharing stories about cases they'd helped with. "I have an announcement," Patricia said when everyone had gathered. "After 30 years running this organization, I'm stepping down as director." Shocked silence. "It's time," Patricia continued. "I'm tired, and there's a new generation ready to take over." She looked directly at Emily. If she's willing, Emily's brain short-circuited. What? I'm recommending you as my replacement. The board still has to approve it, but they usually follow my recommendations. Patricia smiled. You've proven you can build something from nothing. You understand what whistleblowers go through, and you're not burned out yet, which is more than I can say for most of the staff. I can't. I'm running a restaurant. So you'll do both, or you'll choose one, or you'll figure out some hybrid approach that no one's thought of yet. That's your decision. Patricia cut herself a piece of cake. But I think you're ready. I think you've been ready for a while. Emily spent the next week in a state of low-grade panic. Running the fund meant real responsibility, staff management, fundraising, strategic planning. It meant less time for Graves. It meant stepping fully into a role she'd never asked for. But it also meant continuing Victor's work, making sure the next whistleblower had better protection, building systems that valued truth over profit. She talked to Matteo about it. She talked to Nathan about it. She talked to Marcus and Dennis and everyone she could think of. What do you want to do? Matteo finally asked, cutting through all the analysis. I want to do both. I want to run the fund and keep Graves going. I want to help whistleblowers and employ deaf workers and somehow make all of it work together. So do that. It's impossible. You walked out of a hostage situation holding a fake bomb. Compared to that, this is easy. Emily laughed despite herself. Nothing about this is easy. No, but you're going to do it anyway, because that's who you are now. The person who does impossible things because they matter. She accepted the position in October. The board approved her unanimously, probably because no one else wanted the job. Emily became director of the Whistleblower Fund while still running Graves 3 days a week. Marcus took over as general manager on the days she wasn't there. Nathan increased his volunteer hours to help cover gaps. It was messy and chaotic and definitely not sustainable long-term, but it worked. Somehow, it worked. November brought the second anniversary of the trial verdicts. Emily and Nathan went to Victor's grave together, bringing flowers and standing in silence while cold wind whipped around them. Do you think he'd be proud? Nathan asked quietly. Of what we've built? I don't know. I didn't know him well enough to say. Emily adjusted the flowers. But I hope so. I think he would be. The fund is thriving. Graves is successful. 3 more engineers have come forward this year because they knew they'd have support. That's because of you. It's because of a lot of people. Stop deflecting the credit, Emily smiled. You stop deflecting the credit. You volunteered over 500 hours this year. You've helped restructure our funding model. You've personally counseled dozens of whistleblowers. I'm trying to make up for what I did. You can't make up for it, but you can move forward from it. There's a difference. They stood at the grave until the cold became unbearable, then walked back to Nathan's car. Cameron wants to know if you'll come to Thanksgiving, Nathan said as they drove back into the city. He's very specific that you have to bring Matteo because Cameron wants to learn more sign language, and Matteo is apparently the coolest teacher ever. Your son has good taste. So is that a yes? Emily thought about it. Thanksgiving with Nathan and Cameron felt like crossing some kind of line, moving from colleagues and friends into something more like family. Yes, she said. We'll come. Thanksgiving was chaotic in the best way. Cameron had invited approximately 30 people without telling his father, so Nathan's apartment was packed with an eclectic mix of kids from Cameron's school, parents Nathan barely knew, and somehow 3 of Emily's servers from Graves who'd heard there was free food. Emily and Matteo spent most of the afternoon teaching sign language to anyone who wanted to learn. Cameron picked it up with the frightening speed of a 7-year-old's brain. By dessert, he was signing complete sentences. This is nice, Nathan said during a quiet moment while they washed dishes. Having people here, feeling like life is about more than just surviving. You're building a new normal, Emily said. It's different from what you had before, but it's real. I like this normal better, even though it involves washing dishes by hand because my dishwasher is broken. That's what real life looks like. Broken dishwashers and too many people and chaos that somehow works. Nathan smiled. When did you become so philosophical? Trauma and therapy, great combination for personal growth. December came with a surprise. Emily was at the fund going through grant applications when she got a call from an unknown number. Miss Harper, this is Gerald Whitmore from the National Whistleblower Center. We'd like to give you our annual Advocacy Award for your work supporting whistleblower protections. Emily almost dropped her phone. The National Whistleblower Center was one of the biggest organizations in the field. Their Advocacy Award was a legitimate honor. I'm not... She stopped and took a breath. Can I think about it? Of course. But I should mention the award comes with a $50,000 grant to support your work. $50,000. That was half a year's operating budget for the fund. That was kitchen equipment upgrades for graves. That was real money that could help real people. Yes, Emily said. I'll accept. Thank you. The award ceremony was in Washington, D.C. in January, 3 years after the restaurant. Emily brought Mateo as her +1 and wore a dress that cost more than she was comfortable admitting. The ceremony was full of lawyers and activists and people who'd spent their careers fighting for transparency and accountability. Emily felt completely out of place until she saw Victor's family sitting in the audience. When she accepted the award, Emily didn't talk about herself. She talked about Victor Graves, about the engineers who'd come forward after him, about the systems that still needed changing. I'm not a hero, she said, looking out at the crowd. I'm just someone who happened to be in the right place at the right time and made a choice. The real heroes are the people who choose to tell the truth even when they know it will cost them everything. My job, our job, is to make sure that cost gets a little bit lower every year, to build a world where honesty isn't punished and silence isn't rewarded. The speech got a standing ovation. Afterward, at least 20 people wanted to talk to Emily about expanding the fund's work, about partnerships and initiatives and opportunities she'd never considered. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. On the flight back to Chicago, Mateo signed, "You did good up there." I barely knew what I was saying. I was so nervous I thought I might pass out. You seemed confident. That's called acting. Mateo smiled. You know what Victor would say if he could see you now? What? He'd say you proved that one person choosing to act can change things, that speaking up matters, that the world can be better if enough people refuse to stay silent. Emily thought about that, about the shy waitress she'd been 3 years ago, about the woman she'd become, still anxious, still imperfect, but no longer invisible. I hope he'd be proud, she signed. He would be, I'm sure of it. Spring came to Chicago with the kind of tentative warmth that made people forget how brutal the winter had been. Emily sat in Graves during a quiet Tuesday afternoon, going through applications for the next training program cohort. The door opened and Nathan walked in with Cameron. We're interrupting, Nathan said. You're always interrupting. That's your thing. Emily set down the applications. What's up? Cameron bounced forward. I have a question. Okay. You know how my dad helps at your work and your restaurant? Yes. And you come to our apartment a lot? Yes. And we all hang out together like family? Emily glanced at Nathan, who was studiously examining the menu like it might have changed since yesterday. I guess we do, Emily said carefully. So are you my dad's girlfriend? The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt her face heat up. Nathan looked like he wanted to melt into the floor. Cam, that's not... We haven't... Nathan stammered. It's a simple question, Cameron insisted with the brutal honesty of an 8-year-old. You're always together. You smile a lot when you talk to her. She brings you coffee the way you like it. That's what girlfriends do on TV. Emily realized she was holding her breath. She looked at Nathan, who looked back at her with an expression that was equal parts mortified and hopeful. We're friends, Emily said finally. Good friends. But could you be more than friends? Cameron pressed. Because I think that would be cool. You're nice, and you don't talk to me like I'm a baby, and you make my dad less sad. Cameron, Nathan's voice was firm. That's enough. You don't ask people questions like that. Why not? Because it's personal and complicated and... Nathan stopped. We're leaving. I'm so sorry, Emily. He's been watching too many sitcoms with his mother. But Cameron didn't move. He looked at Emily with those serious eyes that were so much like his father's. Do you like my dad? He asked. Emily could have deflected, could have changed the subject, could have done what she'd always done, stay safe, stay invisible, avoid the complicated feelings. Instead, she said, yes, I like your dad very much. Good. Cameron seemed satisfied. Because he likes you too. He told his friend Mark that you're the smartest person he knows, and also the bravest, and also you make him want to be better. Cameron! Nathan looked like he wanted to disappear entirely. What? You did say that. I heard you on the phone. Emily stood up slowly. Her heart was hammering. Nathan? He met her eyes. I'm going to kill my son. And then I'm going to die of embarrassment, in that order. Is it true? Which part? All of it. Nathan took a breath. Yes, all of it. You're smart and brave, and you make me want to be better. And I know the timing is terrible, and we have a complicated history, and you probably don't think of me that way, but Emily kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or movie perfect. It was awkward and brief and happened in the middle of a restaurant while his son watched. But it was real. When she pulled back, Nathan looked stunned. I've been thinking about you that way for 6 months, Emily said. I just didn't think you'd feel the same. Are you kidding? You're you. You're everything. I'm a mess. I work too much. I have panic attacks. I'm still in therapy dealing with trauma from the restaurant. I'm a convicted felon on probation who lost everything because I was too cowardly to do the right thing. We're both messes. Maybe we can be messes together. Cameron made a gagging noise. Are you going to kiss again? Because I think I've seen enough. They both laughed. Emily ruffled Cameron's hair. Guy, your dad and I need to talk, she told him. Privately. Can you go look at the kitchen? Marcus might let you help make dessert. Really? Really. Cameron took off toward the kitchen. Nathan and Emily sat down at one of the tables. This is crazy, Emily said. We work together. We have history. There are so many reasons this is a bad idea. I know. But I want to try anyway. So do I. Nathan reached across the table and took her hand. We'll go slow. Figure it out as we go. No pressure. I've never been good at slow. Then we'll go whatever speed feels right, as long as we're honest with each other. Emily squeezed his hand. I can do honest. Honest is kind of my whole thing now. They sat there for a while, holding hands across the table in the restaurant Emily had built from grief and hope and Victor Graves's memory, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt like maybe the story wasn't just about surviving trauma. Maybe it was also about what came after. The next few months were careful and hopeful and sometimes awkward. Emily and Nathan dated like teenagers, navigating the weird space between friendship and something more. They went to movies and argued about dinner choices and learned how to be together without the weight of the hostage situation always between them. Cameron was thrilled, which helped. Mateo was cautiously supportive, which Emily appreciated. The people at the fund in Graves had opinions ranging from supportive to concerned, but mostly, people just let them figure it out. By summer, Nathan had officially moved out of his apartment and into a small house with an actual yard. Cameron was ecstatic about the yard. Nathan was less ecstatic about lawn maintenance. I have never mowed a lawn in my entire life, he told Emily while staring at the overgrown grass with despair. I don't even know where to start. You hire someone, or you watch a YouTube video, or you ask your neighbor. I don't know my neighbors. Then this is a good opportunity to meet them. Nathan ended up meeting his neighbors, learning to mow the lawn, and discovering he was actually decent at gardening. Emily watched him transform from a billionaire CEO to just a guy who worried about crabgrass and volunteered at nonprofit organizations, and she fell a little more in love with him every day. Not that she told him that yet. They were still taking things slow. In August, the fund received a major grant from a tech billionaire who'd been following their work. $500,000 to expand whistleblower support services nationwide. This is insane, Emily told Patricia. What am I supposed to do with $500,000? Hire more staff, open regional offices, build the infrastructure to help people across the country, not just in Chicago. Patricia smiled. You're going national, Emily, whether you're ready or not. Emily was definitely not ready, but she did it anyway, because that's what she'd been doing for 3 years, taking on things she wasn't ready for and figuring them out as she went. By October, the fund had offices in 3 cities. Graves was training its 5th cohort of deaf workers. Emily was working 70-hour weeks again, and Nathan kept threatening to stage an intervention. You promised you'd set boundaries, he said one night when she showed up at his house at 11 p.m. still working on her laptop. I am setting boundaries. I only worked 12 hours today instead of 14. That's not better. It's slightly better. Nathan closed her laptop. Come sit on the couch with me and Cameron. We're watching a nature documentary about penguins. I have grant applications to review. The grant applications will still be there tomorrow. The penguins are happening now. Emily let herself be pulled to the couch, where Cameron immediately curled up against her side. They watched penguins waddle across ice for an hour, and Emily fell asleep halfway through. She woke up still on the couch with a blanket over her and morning light streaming through the windows. Nathan was in the kitchen making breakfast. Cameron was at the table doing homework. It felt like family, like home, like something worth protecting. Morning, Nathan said when he noticed she was awake. Coffee? Please. He brought her a mug, made exactly the way she liked it, because of course he knew, and sat down beside her. I've been thinking, he said carefully. About what? About us. About the future. About whether we're ready to talk about what this is becoming. Emily's heart sped up. What is it becoming? I think it's becoming permanent, if you want it to be. Are you asking me to move in? Eventually, maybe. Right now I'm asking if you see a future here, with me, with Cameron, with this weird life we've built together. Emily looked at Cameron bent over his homework, at the kitchen where Nathan had learned to make eggs without burning them, at the house that was nothing like the penthouse he used to own but somehow felt more like a home. Yes? She said. I see a future here. Nathan kissed her, soft and certain. Good. Because Cameron's already planning what color to paint the spare bedroom for your brother when he visits. He what? Purple. He wants it to be purple. I tried to explain that most adults don't want purple bedrooms, but he was very insistent. Emily laughed. Purple is fine. Mateo will love it. November marked the 3rd anniversary of the trial verdicts. Emily, Nathan, and Cameron visited Victor's grave together. Cameron had made a drawing of the restaurant with his school art class, and they left it at the headstone along with flowers. Thank you, Emily told the name carved in stone, for being brave when I wasn't, for starting something that became all of this. They stood in silence for a while. Then Cameron signed something. He'd been learning from Mateo and was getting pretty good, and Emily realized he was signing thank you to Victor too. Her eyes stung with tears. On the way back to the car, Cameron asked, Do you think the man who died is happy about your restaurant? I think he would be, Emily said. I hope he would be. I think he's proud of you. My teacher says people who die aren't really gone as long as we remember them. Your teacher is right. Cameron thought about that. Then I'll remember him too, so he's extra not gone. Emily hugged him tight, this kid who'd lost so much, but somehow stayed hopeful. December brought unexpected news. The Department of Defense announced they were awarding a contract to redesign the Talon 9 guidance system, and the company that won the bid had specifically highlighted their new whistleblower protection protocols as part of their proposal. It's working, Patricia told Emily. The changes we pushed for, the protections we fought for, they're actually being implemented. Companies are starting to see whistleblower-friendly policies as competitive advantages instead of liabilities. That's because of Victor and the engineers who came forward after him. It's because of you too. Stop minimizing your role in this. Emily was still learning to accept credit, still learning to believe that what she'd done mattered, but the evidence was getting harder to ignore. January marked 3 years since the restaurant had opened. Emily threw a celebration at Graves, free appetizers for everyone, speeches from staff, a sign language performance by the current training cohort. Victor's family came, Patricia came. Half the whistleblower community in Chicago came. It was chaotic and loud and perfect. Nathan found Emily in the kitchen during a quiet moment. You did this, he said, gesturing at the packed dining room. You took the worst night of our lives and turned it into this. We did this. All of us. No, this was you, your vision, your courage, your refusal to let Victor's death be meaningless. He paused. I'm so proud of you. I know I tell you that a lot, but I mean it every time. Emily kissed him. I'm proud of us. For surviving. For building something better. Think Victor would approve? I think he'd tell us to stop being sentimental and get back to work. They laughed and returned to the celebration, to the community they'd built, to the future they were still figuring out one day at a time. That night, after everyone left and the restaurant was clean, Emily sat alone in the quiet space and thought about how far she'd come. From invisible waitress to director of a national organization. From someone who hid from attention to someone who used it to create change. She thought about Victor Graves, who died trying to tell the truth. About Nathan, who'd learned to live with his mistakes instead of being destroyed by them. About Cameron, who'd somehow stayed kind despite everything he'd been through. About Mateo, who'd supported her even when her choices seemed crazy. She thought about the hundreds of people the fund had helped over the past 3 years. The dozens of deaf workers who'd found jobs through Graves's training program. The corporate policies that had changed because people were finally paying attention. None of it brought Victor back. None of it erased the trauma or fixed everything that was broken about the system. But it mattered anyway. It had to matter. Emily locked up the restaurant and walked home through cold Chicago streets, past the building where she used to live in a studio apartment that smelled like mildew, past the coffee shop where she and Nathan had rebuilt her business plan, past all the spaces that had been part of her transformation. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Cameron wants to know if you'll come over for breakfast tomorrow. He's making pancakes. Fair warning, they'll be terrible. Emily smiled and texted back. I'll be there. She would be there. For breakfast, for terrible pancakes, for whatever came next. She would keep showing up, keep building, keep honoring the memory of a man who died trying to do the right thing by actually doing the right things herself. It wasn't a perfect ending. There were still hard days and panic attacks and moments when Emily questioned every choice she'd made. The restaurant struggled sometimes. The fund fought constant battles for funding and attention. Nathan still carried guilt. Emily still had nightmares. But they were building something real. Something that mattered. Something that proved survival wasn't just about making it through trauma. It was about what you chose to create with the pieces that remained. Emily Harper had spent 30 years being invisible. Then one terrifying night, she'd been seen. And instead of hiding again, she'd chosen to keep being visible, to use her voice, to build spaces where other invisible people could be seen too. That was her story. Not the hostage situation, not the trial, not the media attention or the awards or any of the external validation. Her story was what came after. The slow, difficult, beautiful work of transforming trauma into purpose. Of proving that sometimes the people who save us are the ones brave enough to truly listen. And the people we save most of all are ourselves. 3 years after the worst night of her life, Emily Harper was finally, completely, undeniably visible. And she was okay with that.